You wake before the bells, when the room is pale as unbaked bread, and the hearth gives a last sigh of night. You lie a breath longer, feeling your lips at rest, the easiest moment they will have today. Then you rise, because waiting does not make it shorter. Bare feet find cool stone. Your hands remember the jug, the cup, the rosemary hung to dry. You pour a finger of wine into the basin and drop in the sprig. Garden and cellar rise together. You rinse your mouth once, twice, and spit into the ash that swallows politely. It is not glamour, it is steadiness. The taste is tart and leaf bright, and for a moment your mouth belongs only to you. A folded linen waits. Yesterday's lie made it stiff. Water persuades it to kindness. You wipe your face, cheeks, jaw hinge, the small hollow under the ear where whispers settle. From a tiny pot, you take a touch of beeswax and smooth it along the seam of your lips. It will meet wind and bristle, and the damp brush of other people's habits. Better to meet them prepared. You open the door and stand in the frame. The lane is a hush of old straw and new light. With the birch twig broom you sweep the threshold, steady strokes that gather grit and crumbs into a small drift. A spider has thrown a single thread across the jam. You lift it with a fingertip and lay it aside. You wipe the latch, not to make it shine, but to say that hands are welcome here. Inside, your tools of courtesy stand ready. A clove-studded orange in a net gives a warm winter spice. A square of linen rests folded into eighths. A little vial of vinegar keeps its sharp lesson corked until needed. A sprig of mint is tied with thread. Beside them lies your tally stick, one shallow notch already cut for luck. You look up and down the lane. East leans from slate toward pearl. You breathe once for yourself before your breath belongs to the day. You think about counting, because counting is calm faces, kisses, angles found in time. You remind yourself of the truth that steadies the hands. Here, in this century and in this land, kin and familiar neighbors greet with kisses upon the cheek, one or two, and sometimes more if zeal or province asks for it. It is not romance. It is the hinge the door of the day swings on, a small oiling of the world, saying it helps. A kiss is a hinge, not a bell. You bruise the mint between your teeth until it wakes. You smile at the odd wisdoms people bring to such mornings. A neighbor rubs a crumb of stale bread with wine and polishes his teeth, certain he gleams like a saint statue. An aunt warms her lips at the hearth, so the first touch will not be sharp. Once a pilgrim chewed angelica root against the cold, and the meadow sweet of it followed him like a quiet song. You settle veil and cap. The cap's edge is a narrow shore. Your cheek is a tide that must know where to stop. Too low, and the veil drags damp across your face. Too high, and it slips when you bow. You practice the small tilt that keeps cloth from tasting lips. Chin a finger to the right, eyes soft to the left, breath held just so. Courtesy prefers rehearsals no one sees. Numbers tug at mornings. In some towns, one kiss is welcome and two are kinship. Elsewhere, the count goes the other way, and a traveler from the south leans in 3 times, as if he were a door that needs several tries to close. You watch the eyes, the quick secret counting there, and match your cheek to their measure. Yet historians still argue whether these counts were settled customs or guesses stitched from scattered records and tidy books of manners. You accept the doubt as you accept weather. Not yours to rule, but yours to meet. You take up the tally stick and run a thumb along yesterday's marks. Each notch is a face. Each face held a flavor of the road. Smoke from an inn, apple from a pocket, salt from sea wind, lentils from a pot. You remember onions with patience and garlic with greater patience, and the winter when many kept a clove tucked in a cheek for toothache. The pomander earned its keep then. You roll the orange now and hear the faint crackle of clove in the rind like tiny kindling. One more small kindness before you let the day in. With the broom you make a thin crescent of clean floor just inside the threshold, a line that is not a wall but feels like one. On one side is your breath, on the other the world's. You touch the latch and find your reflection in it, dim as a pond at first light. Your face looks calm enough to lend to others. That will do. You walk through the order in your mind, the way a scribe traces words he knows by heart. Elders, then patrons, then messengers, then friends, then the ones with baskets, and last, the children, who arrive like weather unplanned. Order keeps tangles from tightening. You are grateful for anything that unties the day before it knots again. Now you open the shutters. Morning enters in narrow stripes that widen. Light touches the broom, the cloth at your belt, the orange in your hand. The city adds small noises. A fishmonger testing a boast. A dog changing sides in its sleep. A bucket trying to be a drum against a well. You lean a shoulder to the jam, weight balanced, cheek ready. The beeswax holds at the corners of your mouth. You feel the tiny brace it gives. You breathe in once, out once, and let the breath go. It will be simple, you tell yourself, though not easy. Polite as bread, ordinary as dust, and by noon it will ache like any faithful task. That is all right. The day does not ask for bravery, only for steadiness. You can be steady. A bell strikes, thin as wire. Another answers. The sound walks the town from tower to tower. You lift the bar from its cradle. The door swings inward, slow. Cool air bows and enters. You rest a hand on the latch one more time and think, come then. Come, and we will do this ordinary thing with care, as many times as the day requires, and no more. You make a small procession of objects on the table. Orange in its net, linen in its folds, a sponge asleep in a jar of vinegar, a tin of beeswax, a pin for a disobedient veil. Inventory is a kind of courage. If you can count it, you can face it. The pomander goes first. You roll it and feel the prickle where each clove pierces the rind. It smells like a kitchen promising winter will not win. You check the string and hang it from your belt so it thumps your hip with a steady knock. When lips approach, you tilt the scent forward, the way a host leans a candle into a shadow. No heroism, only the arithmetic of small defenses. Next, the linen. You refold it so a clean triangle presents at a finger's flick. The cloth is thin as a promise, but ash-lye made it honest. One corner dampens with rosewater for rouge and road dust. Another square disappears into your sleeve, because sleeves are where foresight hides. The vinegar jar waits its turn. You open it just enough to confirm it is still vinegar and not regret. The sponge is faithful, smelling of sour pride and old panics. A faint sniff between greetings can straighten a wilting composure faster than a sermon. You close the lid and tie the cord tight. Let the world come as it comes. You test the beeswax with a thumbprint and warm a thread of it between finger and lip offense built in plain sight. A packet of mint leaves whispers green. You slide one to soften on your tongue. You are an orchard's worth of preventions pretending to be a person. You rehearse the motions as you would letters. Step, incline, touch of cheek, retreat, breathe. Elders first, then households that give work, then news bearers, neighbors after, and children last, who ignore every list. Your neck learns the angles, chin low for veiled ladies, chin higher for men whose brims dream of your forehead. Hands rest easy, ready to become gentle gates that steer a wobbling approach. A steadying fact. In late medieval France, pomanders, aromatic balls, or clove-studded fruits ride belts and palms to sweeten breath and ward foul airs, common in good houses as well as at court. Knowing that makes your orange feel less like vanity and more like belonging. You smile at the day's quirks. Someone will swear by burnt bread rubbed across teeth black cleans black. He says before leaning in with the confidence of a proverb. You will answer with clove and patience. Historians still argue whether vinegar sponges' little scent defenses were ordinary fixtures in 15th-century villages, or mostly tools that surfaced in towns during seasons of fear, neat in manuals yet rare in common purses. You look at your jar and decide arguments cannot hurt it. Vinegar will do what vinegar does whether scholars nod or frown. You chase stray hair under the cap so the veil sits without complaint. A pin between your lips, another in your fingers left side first, then right so. The cloth frames your cheek like a calm bracket. You practice the small smile that looks friendly at 3 paces and neutral at 1. You allow a brief calculation. If the market draws well, you will spend 2 hours on arrivals, 3 on comings and goings, and 1 on farewells that forget how to end. At 2 kisses each, with stray thirds when zeal outruns math, your face will greet a small parish by dusk. The beeswax suddenly feels thin. You breathe and let the numbers retreat to their corner. A borrowed little book of manners offers a pebble of advice. Kiss peacefully, without pressing, without noise. Not a bad rule for doors and mornings. One last circuit. The floor shows its crescent of clean. The latch moves without a squeak. The threshold stone is dry after night rained. You test the weight of your belt, the orange, the keys, the pouch, the handkerchief, so nothing tugs your posture sideways. One more breath, and you taste the day's palate. Clove and vinegar, wool and wood smoke, a ghost of garlic, pretending it belongs to the hearth and not to you. Cool water turns the mint from sharp to patient. You purse your lips once. The waxed border holds. Before you open the door, you rehearse trouble kindly. If someone miscounts the kisses, you give a soft laugh that offers a path back. If a mustache wants to introduce itself, you angle your cheek like a polite fence. If a child arrives sticky with honey, you offer a hand to pat first, so sweetness chooses your fingers rather than your face. On the bench, you lay out gloves. Not for wearing gloves lie, but for lending a faint trace of orris to your hands, so the touch that steadies a shoulder smells like roots and violet instead of stew. Your palms must stay quiet. Their task is steering, not speaking. You flex each finger until the joints remember to move without complaint. You unwrap the tally stick and run a thumb along yesterday's shallow nicks. Each cut was a face, and each face carried its own weather in smoke. Sea salt, cabbage, quince, candle grease. You are not sentimental about it. You simply like to know what the day has added to you. You rewrap the stick so it will not scratch, as if saving wood might spare a cheek. You think, too, of the pax-board that travels at mass wood or silver, sometimes painted kissed and handed along so peace can be shared without a tangle of breath. It is a clever kindness, the same family as vinegar and cloves and folded linen, devices that let good will arrive without bringing the whole person with it. The thought makes your doorway feel less like a hazard and more like a craft. You test posture one last time. Feet planted as if on a boat, neck loose, shoulders low. Your cheek learns the distance where warmth is felt but not exchanged. A palm's breadth that keeps courtesies from meeting as collisions. You do not expect perfection. You expect repetition, which is much safer. Light at the shutter brightens to breadcrumb gold. You straighten, take the orange in one hand and the folded linen in the other, and set your face to agreeable. No trumpet announces cloves and cloth. That is a blessing. The bar lifts. The door opens on its faithful hinges. Your breath becomes the metronome of greet and release. Footsteps turn the corner. You smile, and the day begins its steady work. Travelers find you. They come braided into the morning like threads of different colors, each asking to be handled in its own way. You feel the requests with your skin. 2 steps on the threshold, and you can tell whose village favors 1 kiss and whose lane teaches 3. You do not announce it. You simply measure and match. The first pair carry the butter-smooth accent of the north. One nods, one smiles, and both lean with the small economy that says, once on each cheek, no more. You oblige. Soft touch here, soft touch there. A breath between like a hinge that opens and closes without creak. Your wax holds. Your linen remains folded. Their wool smells of clean barns and cool milk. They say little. North air is like that. You taste the sky more than the people. Behind them, a woman in a russet hood brings the Loire with her. She comes brighter, brisker, tasting faintly of pears, and the corners of her eyes already count higher. You know before she moves that the greeting will be 3. 1, 2, and the third, as if to settle the matter. You keep your footing and let it happen, guiding the last touch like a boat into a quiet berth. You do not resent the extra courtesy. You only think about the arithmetic of it. How a face can be a map that tells you how many roads it expects to walk. A peddler from the far south arrives soon after, the sun tucked under his cloak, even on a pale day. He comes with stories, and, unexpectedly, 4. The first is for meeting, the second for merriment, the third because the first 2 were quick, and the 4th because he does not know where to put his hands. You lend him a shoulder with 1 palm, the lightest steer, and let him find the end. When he steps back, he looks pleased, as if he has paid a debt you did not ask for. A faint smell of figs lingers. You smile because that is the rule, and because it is hard not to enjoy a person who arrives with summer in his pockets. You keep an invisible counter in your mind. 1 means we are neighbors and we'll talk later. 2 means we sit at one table when the bread is thick. 3 means the road was long and the heart is glad to find a face. 4 means the traveler has made friends with his own story and cannot stop offering it. This is not in any book, but it helps to have a set of quiet sayings to carry under the tongue, a steady fact to hold while cheeks work. Books of courtesy from these centuries advise that kisses are fit greetings among kin and familiar company, to be delivered gently, without noise or pressing, and placed upon the cheek rather than the mouth. This makes you feel reputable as you stand in the doorway with your orchard of preventions, offering nothing scandalous, only the small oil for a social hinge. Then come the exceptions, always charming and inconvenient. A baker dusted with flower kisses quickly, because dough waits. He leaves a ghostly crescent on your veil that you brush away as if erasing a cloud. A clerk from a chapter house hovers so long deciding whether to kiss at all that you meet him with a bow instead, saving both of you from harm by indecision. A Breton cousin uses a proverb as a rule, 2 for the road, 3 for the hearth, and follows it even while standing in the lane. You file the saying with others. You keep for comfort rather than correctness. Historians still argue whether these regional counts were truly fixed in the 15th century, or if later habits and tidy maps have been folded backward into earlier days to make a patchwork seem like a quilt. You nod inwardly at the debate and continue reading faces. Arguments cannot kiss for you. Your own face learns to predict. A hat at a precise angle means 1. A laughter that begins before the embrace means 3. A mustache on very good terms with its wax often means too much enthusiasm and at least an attempt at a 4th. You do not flinch, you angle. You let the brim brush linen instead of skin, and the wax leaves its neat signature on cloth instead of you. Your cloth, faithful conspirator, absorbs the boast. There are the Languedoc voices, round and warm, that make 2 feel like a feast. There are Burgundian courtesies, elaborate at the edges, where the kiss takes longer to arrive because the bow must be admired first. There are men from Brittany with salt-damp cloaks who keep their lips shy of your cheek, offering air as if air were safer. You accept air. Air is easier to wash from linen. A quirky tidbit to amuse the hour. An old aunt once confessed she kept her counts by the embroidery on her coif. 3 rows of little leaves for the family who kiss thrice, 2 sprigs for the neighbors who prefer pairs. So when she saw a household coming up the lane, she knew how many times to prepare her jaw. You admired the cunning and the vanity of it, nodding as if it were scripture. Secret stitches, taught by experience. The miscounts are gentle lessons. Someone leans away after 2 when they expected 3, and you offer a small tilt that says, "No harm done, we can leave it here." Someone leans in for another when you expected none, and you let them meet the edge of your smile pleasant, firm, and finished. The art is in the breath you offer between. A pause long enough to suggest completion, short enough to be polite if you are wrong. You grow skilled at pauses. By midday, your tally stick could almost sort the notches by province, if wood could remember accents. You touch it once and then leave it in its cloth, because thinking too much about counts makes your cheek impatient. Better to let the body do its practiced work. The neck knows when to incline. The hands know when to steady a shoulder. The lips know how not to purse even when vinegar would like to argue its case. Now and then, someone brings mass into your doorway, mentioning the pax-board and how it carries peace without confusion. You answer with a small nod and think how many devices the world invents to stand between goodwill and exhaustion. Wood with a kiss, fruit with cloves, cloth with lie, rules with numbers. It is not distrust, it is care. Your work, you decide, is to make care look like ease. The afternoon thins the crowd into singles and latecomers, who usually kiss by whatever number they were raised on, heedless of place. You meet them in theirs because refusing a custom scuffs more than a cheek. In the quiet hour after the bell, you rest your face in your hands and feel where the bones complain. The bones do not count. They simply ask for warmth. You give them that, rubbing the joints by the jaw until the ache smooths out. Evening will bring its own arithmetic farewells that forget when to end. But for now, you stand in the doorway with your map of faces and numbers tucked behind your eyes. You have become a small border between provinces, a place where twos and threes, and the occasional bewildering four, are translated into calm. You do not need a decree to tell you how many. You have the steady weather of your own composure, which adds up to enough. Veils are weather. You remind yourself changeable, beautiful, and always in the way of something. You face them the way a sailor faces canvas. Wind, angle, hand upon a rope. Your rope is a pin in the habit of your neck. The first visitor of the hour arrives in a hood that wants to be a house, brim as wide as a small table, shadow deep enough to hide a grin. You bow half a hand's breadth lower so the brim kisses air and not your brow. Cloth brushes cloth. Your cheek finds the side of hers, a brief warmth that does not snag, and the day learns your angle again. Hats and veils are conspirators in small mischief. A kiss is simple. The machinery around it is not. You read edges like storm signs. A veil drawn close over a cone, like hennin, means you wait until she steadies the fall. A crespine of net under a short hood invites a clear path. A heart-shaped escoffion makes its own rules and expects you to admire them first. Men's chaperones keep their long tails the liripipes that think they are banners. If you are not alert, one will flick your neck like a teasing fish and pretend innocence. You do not scold cloth. You outmaneuver it. A steady historical fact anchors your patience. In 15th century France, headgear is a language women of means set veils over Burgundian hennins or padded rolls, and men commonly wear the chaperon, a hood-turned hat with its hanging tail, so a greeting often begins with negotiating architecture before it reaches skin. Knowing this makes obstacles feel like alphabet, not insult. You honor the building first, then the inhabitant. You keep your own cap pinned to obedience. The veil frames your cheeks like the jambs of a doorway, and you have practiced that doorway's swing. You incline your head a finger to the right for a brim, a finger to the left for a veil. A breath's hinge when both insist at once. Your hands hover near a visitor's shoulder not to grasp, only to steady, if cloth loses its courage. This is carpentry you do with air, measuring a span no one sees except your neck. There is quiet humor in the day's wardrobe. Someone approaches with a truncated hennin, the point shorn like a tower humbled by time, and the veil drapes in a tidy fall that behaves better than pride. Someone else wears a bourrelet, the padded circle that looks like a cushion rescuing a skull from thought. You refuse to picture balancing loaves upon it. You simply find the angle where your cheek may arrive without interference. You are the steward of angles, paid in relief instead of coin. A quirky tidbit to sweeten patience. The seamstress who minds your veil stitches the hem with a few tiny grains of lead, just enough weight to teach linen to listen, she says, tapping the thread. The fall is kinder for it. The breeze still plays, but it plays politely. You think of those hidden seeds whenever a visitor's veil behaves like a small, curious animal and nudges your face as if it wants a share of the greeting. Historians still argue whether such splendid headgear, especially the tallest hennins and elaborate escoffions, walked ordinary streets outside wealthy towns, or whether paintings have trained us to expect a forest of cones where most days showed hoods and modest veils. The dispute moves like weather across pages. You do what weathered people do. You treat what arrives as true for the space of your doorway. You add small crafts to your defense. Before opening, you rubbed a thread of wax along the line where veil meets lip so stray threads will slide and not drink from you. You choose a spot on the threshold where the light falls sideways. Glare makes you misjudge distance, and misjudged distance makes noses meet like embarrassed birds. A spare pin waits in your cuff, its head wrapped in a bead of wool, in case a visitor's veil grows adventurous and needs gentle persuasion to fall back into manners. The hat-tipping dance repeats like a psalm. A merchant bows with drama, chaperone brim sweeping like a tide. You step neither forward nor back, letting the wave pass, then lean into the safe cleft of space it leaves. A grandmother arrives with her veil pinned low, the cloth a little window over her eyes. You incline more deeply so she does not lift her chin and wake the pin's bad temper. She smells of dried apples and lavender drawer lining. Your cheek remembers orchards and cupboards, as well as roads and inns. Sometimes the architecture speaks for the person. A tall hennin held at a brave angle declares confidence and will likely count 3. A hood pulled close like folded hands usually brings a single soft touch and a quick retreat. A chaperone, worn sideways by fashion's latest admirer, announces that he will forget the order of who kisses first. You prepare a tactful fence of smile and palm, and give him the gift of being guided without feeling guided. The trick is to move less than a finger and seem to move not at all. Rules eavesdrop on your morning from memory. You have heard readings of ordinances that fret about the length of trains and the heights of headdresses, certain that too much cloth will make pride spill into the street. The rules never show their faces at your door, but they shape what arrives. A neighbor's veil is modest because a guild's wife should look like a guild's wife. You respect the pattern, even when it turns your work into a puzzle of brims and edges. Accidents will happen. A veil catches on the latch. You free it with the gravity of a clerk rescuing a page from candle flame. A feather insists on tickling. You cough into your linen and smile with your eyes, which can be honest while your mouth pretends all is well. Once a young man, new to fashion, bows so violently that his chaperone flings its tail against his ear. The sound is a soft slap of cloth upon pride. You keep your face a smooth pond, because laughter would undo what courtesy just repaired. By noon, you develop another small craft. When two veils meet, you pause and let cloth introduce itself to cloth before cheeks approach. The fabrics whisper, linen to silk, wool to fine linen, and settle their small hierarchy without you. Then you offer the brief touch that was the purpose, and the veils rustle their assent. You step back. No thread is harmed. You are pleased by this, the way a miller is pleased, when stones rim together without grinding their edges raw. Not every brim is patient. Some hats arrive with stiffened edges that insist on their story before you can tell yours. You study the shadow they cast and place your cheek in the shadow's quietest part. If a pin threatens, you breathe through your nose and remember the weighted hem at your own cheek, trusting the linen to keep its line. If a veil is perfumed so eagerly that it walks into the room before its wearer, you tilt farther and let your pomander answer in gentler tone. A steadying picture helps. You imagine yourself as a hinge set into a carved door, plain but meant for use. Hennon, hood, veil, chaperone, these are the carvings around you. Your task is not to admire or despise, but to swing smoothly so the world may pass through with grace. Any art that keeps faces from colliding is a mercy worth practicing. By afternoon, your neck feels as if it has measured the roofs of a small town. You press warm fingers along the tendons and listen for complaint. They mutter, but do not curse. You breathe the clove of your pomander and the faint sour of vinegar and think, this is what craft smells like. Spice, effort, patience, a little lie. You roll your shoulders, and the veil at your cheek sighs, as if it too has had a day. You say, nearly to the quiet hours now. One more procession of brims, and we shall sit. Evening brings candles, which turn veils to sails again. Flame loves cloth more than it should. You step a pace inward, so no visitor can lean too close to the taper. With light behind them, the silhouettes of hennons are castles and ships, and chaperones become clever birds. You greet the shadows as well as the people, setting the kiss where shadow becomes skin. Lamps lower to embers, edges blur into mercy. At last, the hat-crowded day loosens, and your face returns to being your own house, not a small harbor for other people's roofs. The north wind behaves like a fussy ant, forever advising your face to dress warmer. You answer it with beeswax, which is the closest thing you own to a gentle argument. Before the lane fills, you warm the little tin in your palms until the salve loosens like a patient smile. The wax smells faintly of comb and smoke, a memory of summer hidden in winter's pocket. With the corner of your linen, you draw a thin line along the seam of your lips and the tiny cracks that try to begin at each corner. A quiet boundary forms nothing heroic, only a small, shining no set in place for the day. You work early in such weather because the stones keep yesterday's cold. A split reed mat tempers the threshold. A pair of wool slippers keeps your toes loyal until footsteps require proper posture. You sip something hot spiced ale on feast days, plain water heated on others, and let warmth collect behind your teeth. When you unbar the door, the air hops onto your face like an eager animal. You do not let it bite. You smooth the wax once more with the back of a nail, and step into your role. People arrive wrapped like parcels. Cloaks creak with frost. Fur collars try to swallow their owners. The first cheek that meets yours is the chill of a pewter cup. The second has thawed a little from the first. You take the cold on the wax, not your skin, and the ritual becomes possible. In weather like this, kisses shrink to prudent size, as if breath itself were coin, and must be counted in exact change. A steady historical fact steadies your will. Apothecaries in 15th century France commonly blend beeswax with animal fat or olive oil to make salves for chapped skin, sometimes scenting them with rose or violet, or sweetening with a touch of honey when purse and season allow. You picture the craft wax melted with care, oil stirred in late, scent pressed last summer, and garden decanted for winter use. That thought makes each application feel less like vanity and more like housekeeping for a face. You tend your tools accordingly. The pomander's clove breath grows shy in the cold, so you wear it higher where your own warmth can coax it awake. The vinegar sponge stays corked. Sour air and frozen noses are poor companions. Your linen, stiff from morning lie, softens against your palm as if agreeing to be brave. You study small moisture, the damp in a visitor's scarf, the beads that gather where breath meets wool, the way a mustache collects frost like a hedgerow gathers sparrows. The wind believes in rehearsal. Every hour it returns to test the salve's resolve, slipping a finger down your collar like a gossip. You have your answer ready. Between visitors, you cup your hands and breathe slowly into them, catching your warmth as if it were a tame bird you will release again. Heat returns to your cheeks, not your wax. The wax keeps doing its modest work. A quirky tidbit makes the hour kinder. An old carter once taught you to keep a smooth pebble by the brazier river, round, friendly warming it while you greet, then tucking it against the jaw hinge when the bones grow sulky. Stone remembers summer, he said. He was right. Pressed beneath your veil, the pebble persuades your jaw to unclench, and your neck to stop arguing with the north. Visitors bring their weather with them. A fishwife arrives brick-cheeked from the quay, breath of honest sea. She kisses once, briskly, and leaves a briny gust behind, as if she had paid with salt. A cannon in layered wool offers two precise, measured kisses that smell faintly of candle and book spine. The third hovers and politely dies when you angle away with a practiced smile. A child, the color of cheer under a knitted hood, rises on toes for a kiss and bumps your chin instead. The wax survives with dignity, and you call it a victory for both trade and infancy. You adopt doorway geometry, half a foot deeper inside. The door's angle steals the draft's sharpest edge. At the left jamb, the seam of the wall breaks the wind's stride. If you keep your chin level as a scales pan, tears from cold do not gather and betray your composure. These are country rules learned at a town door. They serve as faithfully as market days. Historians still argue whether fears of bad air, those winter miasmas blamed for coughs, and worse truly shaped household practice in small villages, or if such vigilance mostly belonged to towns and the anxious seasons when contagion taught everyone to be careful. You let the debate pass like a cloud. You know that your neighbor's grandmother keeps vinegar in her kerchief in damp weather, and that she has more winters behind her than most. You follow the elder science of survival and let scholarship arrive when it wishes. The sun clears the roofs like a pale coin, bright, ungenerous. Light deceives newcomers into unbuttoning caution. They pay with a chapped smile. You keep yours buttoned. Wax is thrift. Wax is the difference between an ordinary ache and an unnecessary one. When a beard arrives, rhymed with crystals, you feel the prickle through the salve like nettles through a glove. You breathe out slowly and hear the soft crackle of surrender as the frost changes its mind. At midday, you warm the tin by the hearth and stir it with a clean sliver of wood. The surface brightens the way a pond learns the wind. You add a breath of violet from a wedding favor long repurposed. The scent sits easily with clove and mint, and for an hour the doorway remembers gardens. Even the wind pauses to sniff before resuming its lecture. You lend warmth where you can. A messenger's hands shake, parchment crisp as winter leaves. You offer the brazier and a slice of bread without thinking, and the kiss that follows is almost cheerful. A widow in a worn mantle arrives, with the face of someone who has spoken to cold for too many nights. You give her both cheeks, very gently, and the kindness crowns the ritual with something human. The wax was made for this, guarding the skin so the heart can waste itself a little without bleeding. The day's arithmetic changes in frost. Fewer miscounted kisses, more brief ones. Many noses reddened into a plain democracy. You take comfort in the equalizing color. When every face resembles a boiled beet, ranks soften. You greet elders and patrons in their order. But winter brings everyone nearer to one another, and that feels almost like good news. By late afternoon, the wind tires of winning. Visitors stop arriving sideways. Your jaw thanks the pebble. Your lips, still whole, thank the wax. The tin carries a thumbprint hollow now, a little moon you have mined across the hours. You think sensibly of stores. Tomorrow you will ask the apothecary for more beeswax and oil, because prudence means mending the fence before the sheep remember the gap. Before you close, you look once at the lane, the ruts gone glassy. Hens offended by the cold, the pale ribbon of breath every neighbor wears like a scarf. And you admit that winter has its uses. It teaches accuracy. It turns small preparations into good deeds. It makes a kiss light and honest, as if saying, here is the least I can give that is still real. You prefer the honest least to the extravagant almost. You bar the door and sit by the hearth. The brazier whispers. You rub the leftover warmth of the pebble along the sore line where cheek meets ear, and your face begins to belong to you again. The tin cools shut. You smell wax and smoke, and the last shy mint leaf in your cup. Tomorrow we'll ask again, but tonight the wind must stand outside and talk to itself. You have salved what it tried to take. Friday asks for patience, and you tie yours to your belt beside the pomander. Before the bell, you taste mint and a heel of bread against the tide you know is coming. The lane begins to people itself with piety. Scarves draw close, voices soften, and nearly every mouth you will greet carries a small sea. You smooth a thread of wax across your lips and let the door become your craft. The first visitor smiles, the tidy smile of duty done. He leans with the confidence of obedience and leaves a ribbon of river on your cheek trout for breakfast. Perhaps eel. You answer with rosemary breath and a calm that belongs to practice, not heroism. It is not the ocean's fault. It is Friday, and Friday has its flavor. A steady historical fact steadies you. In 15th century France, Fridays and the season of Lent call for abstaining from flesh of warm-blooded beasts, while fish is permitted fresh, salted, baked, or stewed, so markets and kitchens bend toward water at week's end. Rhythm, not punishment. You are not singled out. You stand at the hinge where custom becomes breath. Your preparations wait within reach. The vinegar sponge sleeps corked. The linen keeps one dampened corner for bright sauces. The wax holds a modest gleam along the seam of your mouth. You have practiced the angle that keeps nostrils innocent without looking like refusal. Cheek offered, eyes kind, breath held for a heartbeat, and no more. Visitors arrive like a menu. Herring, then whiting, a promise of pike. The fishwife passes with a basket that can be felt before it is seen. She kisses briskly, businesslike, not unkind, and leaves a wake like a small boat. You tilt the orange at your belt. Clove and river agree to a truce. For your own amusement, you keep a kitchen trick near the tongue. An old cook taught you the parsley cure. Chew a leaf after fish, so the mouth believes it has walked in a garden. He swore by fennel seed for stubborn cases. When a patron's breath arrives in full armor, you imagine a meadow hiding behind his teeth. The picture is better than complaint. Customs travel in their gear. A clerk from the chapter house brings Lenten care done richly almond milk and saffron, and his 2 kisses are precise, as if punctuation might save you both. A tanner, late for market, kisses once and talks twice as long about lamprey prices in the last hard winter. Your cheek keeps the tally, while your mind wanders to quiet rivers. Sauce is the neighbor of every Friday dish and loves to prove it. Green herb sauce wants to decorate your veil. Mustard behaves no better. You accept a bright kiss of parsley on the hem and leave complaint for ash-lye at dusk. Cloth endures because you ask it to, and because washing is a kind of absolution the basin understands. Another fact helps you forgive what you cannot flee. Town bells and guild habits scaffold the fast fishmonger's stall's throng. Pulpits remind the forgetful, so the day's breath carries authority. It is easier to be gentle, with a custom that rings from a tower you have heard since childhood. Now and then, the door stages a parable. A young squire, eager to be pious, eats salted herring without mercy, and seeks to prove both zeal and friendliness with 3 energetic kisses. You face the tide like a pier steadfast, varnished in wax, and nudge the first onto cloth, the second onto the proper edge of your cheek, the third onto well-mannered air. He steps back glowing. You are quietly proud of your architecture. Historians still argue whether villagers kept the full severity of fasts, eschewing rich dairy as well as flesh, or whether practice softened outside episcopal lies, with butter and cheese slipping onto Friday tables, except in Lent. They also debate how widely tales of fish by exception beaver tail, or the legendary barnacle goose-colored French habits in this century, rather than living mostly in learned anecdotes. You let the questions drift like boats that will find another shore. Midday brings the kindness of steam. Someone passes with pottage fragrant with leeks, and for a moment the air smells of gardens instead of nets. A widow comes with dried cod. You give her both cheeks very gently, and for once the sea is a friend. A boy, paid in warm bread, pauses for breath and errand. You forgive the herring that came before and will come again. You collect small defenses you did not know yesterday. Stand a half-pace deeper when the wind blows from the quay and the salt rides over you to spend itself on the door. Hold the pomander higher and let clove edit what reaches your nose. Speak the greeting a touch more slowly, and people keep the sea to themselves for the length of a civil sentence. The hour after the second bell is the most devout. Faces soften, not from holiness alone, but from hunger. Kisses become tidier, smaller, grateful for company. The ache at the hinge of the jaw begins its evening sermon. You press a warm finger there and it quiets. Light slides toward later. The market sells its last waterborne wares. The fishwife goes home whistling. The clerk returns to books. A grandfather stops for a last word and smells of apples again, as if the sea has finally walked out of every mouth and gone back to its beds. You have shepherded a tide without drowning your temper or your veil. You close the shutters to a palm's width and sit with your tools. The vinegar remains corked. Today needed kindness more than sharpness. The linen shows a constellation of green and 2 flecks of mustard that will tell their story to the basin. The orange has bruised where your hand clutched it. The cloves still stand. You smooth the beeswax tin and see your face in it, wavering but yours. Tomorrow will speak a different language, perhaps cabbage, perhaps smoke, but Friday has kept faith with its fish, and you have kept faith with your steady chair of courtesy. You bank the brazier. Breathe once for the garden, once for the river, and once for yourself, then rise to offer a few more calm sentences to those who knock after sunset. Bristle is a landscape your cheek knows by heart. You could map it blind, the short sand of a morning shave that tried but did not conquer, the day-old field that prickles like rye, the proud hedge of a beard tended as carefully as a garden, and, most eventful of all, the mustache that has made friends with wax and intends to introduce you. You keep your face calm for each encounter. Calm is the oil that keeps the door from squealing. The first visitor of the hour arrives, combed within an inch of vanity. His mustache is parted like a road and trained to curl at the ends. 2 commas arguing with one another. You angle your cheek and feel it. A delicate brush, then a faint ribbon where resin says it has visited. Your linen receives the mark with the patience of a ledger. He steps back, unaware of his signature. You say good morning, as if letters had not been addressed to you. A steady historical fact steadies the humor of it. Barbers in 15th century France tend beards along with hair, shaving and trimming for townsfolk as part of their trade, while oils, fats, and beeswax are used to tame whiskers and smooth skin. Combs and small knives for grooming show up in household gear and in market stalls. Remembering that makes each waxed approach feel less like a surprise and more like honest evidence of the tools people own to arrange their faces. You keep an extra fold of linen for the resin that will not reason with anything but lie. It carries the smell of the hive and smoke, not unpleasant, simply insistent. You smooth your cheek with 2 fingers, and the pomander does a courteous bow over the place where the mustache left ambition behind. The cloth, brave as always, does not complain aloud. After the waxed gentleman comes the cousin of crumbs. He greets with zeal and breakfast both, a tender rain of barley cake and comfort falling from beard to veil. You feel the tiny knock of particles against your skin the way a window feels the first drops of a shower. You step back at the right heartbeat and dust yourself with a practiced flick. He does not notice. He is speaking about geese. You offer a second cheek because he means well, and because the second is usually drier. Between visitors, you consider small crafts you have learned. For a soft beard, you keep your cheeks square and steady, letting hair slide past like grass under the palm. For sharp stubble, you give a breath more distance so bristle grazes wax rather than skin. You accept a faint rasp as the toll. For grand beards that wish to be admired, you lower the angle so the main mass meets veil edge rather than mouth. Steering is gentler than refusing. Cloth does the heavier work. A quirky tidbit keeps your patients amused. An old soldier once confessed he trained his mustache by pinching the ends with 2 goose quills overnight, a tiny harness he called his horses, so the curls would remember their duty. He smelled faintly of tallow and triumph. In the morning, the quills left tidy prints on his cheeks like little hoof marks. He offered 3 kisses with ceremony, and you saved your laughter for later, when even your brassiere pretended to smile. The tally stick remembers textures. A notch for the flour-dusted baker whose beard turned white whenever the door of his oven sighed. A notch for the pilgrim whose unkempt whiskers carried a whole road's dust. A notch for the clerk who could not grow a beard and wore his clean chin like an argument. You are equal to all faces. Your cheek is a small republic, governed by beeswax and courtesy. Historians still argue whether facial hair in this century cleaved to firm-fashion courtiers and prosperous townsmen clean-shaven more often than bearded, or whether the picture shifts with region and occupation, with manuscripts showing tidy chins while parish lists and stray complaints suggest plenty of whiskers among craftsmen and soldiers. Paintings favor order, streets sometimes forget. You let the debate ride beside you and judge only the bristle that arrives. Resin has its seasons. In winter, wax stiffens and grows sharper at the tips. You respect its geometry and steer it toward linen. In summer, oils loosen and make mustaches gentle, but talkative. They would like to share themselves with your veil. You do not gossip with mustaches. You give them cloth. Ash-lye will hear the story later and carry it away like a good priest carries secrets. The barber's work often shows in small ways. A neat line beneath the lower lip, a beard squared at the jaw, a mustache combed flat for the day and coaxed upward at feasts. You can tell who can pay for steel that keeps its bite, and who sharpens at home until the blade sulks. Fresh-shaved skin has a warmth like new bread. 2 days later, the same face is a field of little arrows. You greet both with the same sea-level calm. When crumbs arrive, you think in terms of weather. Let the shower pass. Do not chase the drops. A brisk brush of linen across the veil's hem, and the floor keeps its dignity. You are grateful for the weighted edge your seamstress hid, those tiny grains that make the veil fall cleanly, instead of clinging to the generosity of other people's meals. Linen should have its own will, she said, and gave it one. Not every beard is a challenge. Some are so soft, they apologize for existing when they touch you. Some are braided in small pride for festival days, the plait tied with thread. These require only that you do not laugh, which is easy because you respect any art practiced faithfully. The worst are the half-shaven chin smooth, jaw prickly, a cart with one square wheel. You time your cheek to meet the smooth part and let the rough roll past into air. You learn to steer without appearing to steer. A touch with 2 fingers at a shoulder becomes a gentle oar, keeping enthusiasm from altering your plans. A smaller step than anyone can see changes the angle of a beard to your favor. A soft word spoken while leaning and keeps mouths occupied with answers, rather than with deciding where to land. The door is your boat. You keep it from rocks. Another small fact steadies your hand. Barbers often keep simple perfumed waters, rosemary, sage, orris to rinse after shaving, so a well-kept beard may carry a garden beneath its hedge. When those scents survive the day and reach your cheek, you think of kitchens and still rooms, of women stirring copper pots, of apothecaries counting from memory. It makes whiskers feel less like obstacles and more like letters from other rooms. Sometimes resin writes where you cannot ignore it. A perfect mustache leaves a neat, translucent stripe near the corner of your mouth, like a pilgrim's badge drawn very small. You do not rub it. Rubbing makes proclamation of what only cloth needs to hear. You finish the greeting, step back, and let your folded linen do its quiet erasure. If anyone sees, they pretend they do not. This is an agreement the town keeps. We know the work and do not name it. By late day, your jaw hinge murmurs. Not pain, precisely. More the steady petition of muscles hired to nod and incline. You press a warm finger there and count 3 breaths. The pomander climbs to meet your nose, a shepherd calling the flock of scents back toward the fold. The vinegar remains corked. Sharpness is already visited in other forms. Evening collects its beards for home. The crumb-bearing cousin returns, now clean as a statement, and you admire the miracle of a face after soup. The wax-proud gentleman bows again and keeps his commas to himself. Perhaps the day has softened them. You are merciful to all of them and to yourself. The door has swung all day without squeak. That is something. You bank the brazier and touch the places where resin tried to settle. Veil's hem, linen's corner, the skin at the edge of your smile. Ash-lye will dissolve the day's signatures. Beeswax will restore your border for tomorrow. You think of the barber's neat bench, of combs with their small forest of teeth, of scissors that blink in firelight, and you decide that everybody's trade leaves tracks. Yours is to remove them without complaint. When you close the shutters, you feel at last your own face, bare of other people's stories. It is only skin warmed by embers, faintly smelling of clove and wool. You are grateful for that ordinary truth. Tomorrow, bristle will return like weather. Tomorrow you will steer again. Tonight, your cheek is a field at rest, and no mustache needs tending. You keep a private treaty with color. It may parade past your door, but it must not lay siege to your cheek. So the linen square waits folded into small triangles, each clean corner tucked behind the next like little white geese. When the first fine lady of the hour appears, brightness comes with her cheeks warm as orchard fruit, lips polished as if with the inside of a rose. The greeting is careful, a soft brush of face to face, and then the treaty goes to work. You pivot half a finger, so her rouge lands on your veil's obedient edge, not on your skin, and you lift the clean triangle in one smooth motion, the way a scribe lifts a blotting scrap. The mark surrenders. Your cheek keeps its calm. Pigments have their manners. Some cling, some kiss, and go. Some behave like guests who cannot find the door. The quiet red, made from madder minds itself, and fades as modestly as a blush. Brazilwood's lively stain enjoys an adventure, and tries to leave souvenirs on anything it touches. You learn the texture of each powdery like crushed chalk when dusted over a salve, greasy when stirred with tallow, tacky when married to the clear glare of beaten egg white, damp and faintly sweet when mixed with wine. Your cloth learns them too. The dampened corner lifts what the dry corner would only press deeper. The dry corner gathers what the damp corner would smear. By evening, ash-lye will hear each little story and carry it away, down the drain like gossip that has done its duty. A steady historical fact takes the embarrassment out of your cleaning. In 15th-century France, recipes for cosmetics circulate in household books, and in apothecaries' memories rouges from plant dyes, such as alkanet or madder, sometimes set with egg white or mixed with fats. Face powders scented with orris, skin washes of rosewater and herbs, despite sermons that prefer faces to keep the color granted by weather and modesty. Knowing this, you make room in your patience for paints the way you make room for hats. Both are artifices the century accepts while pretending not to. The day becomes a small atelier of smudges. One lady, stitched into velvet the color of plums, leans warmly, and her cheek leaves a soft half-moon upon your veil. Another carries lily on powdered skin and leaves white on white, a ghost you find only when the light shifts across the door. A young bride arrives with enthusiasm and too much of everything, 3 kisses, a press too firm, and a laughing apology while you, still smiling, reorder the linen's corners as if shuffling quiet cards. Your cheek stays calm. Your cloth does the worrying. You practice small evasions that do not look like evasions. Hold the pomander a touch higher so clove lives between you and the paint. Keep your own waxed border firm so grease must choose a different shore to land on. Angle the veil so any color meets the hem weighted by your seamstress's secret seeds. Weight teaches pigment to slide downward, not inward. The door teaches geometry. Your cheek becomes a line that eyes cannot see, but rouge respects. A quirky tidbit makes you smile even while dabbing. Your grandmother swore by the pinch an apple method. Pinch the cheeks to wake blood, then rub with the cut side of an apple kept in her sleeve. So the orchard does the painting, and nobody can blame a jar, she would say. On feast days, she added a smear of beet or a petal of crushed safflower hidden in honey. You keep a slice of apple for yourself between visitors, though you prefer it in the mouth rather than on the face. The treaty allows small comforts. Cosmetics make noises if you listen. Powder whispers when a sleeve moves. A salve gives the softest sigh under a fingertip. Egg white glaze tightens like a small frost across skin. You can feel it before you see it, the way a pond announces itself even under reeds. You lean very lightly then. Glaze cracks when hurried and carries grievances onto your cheek in bright little scales. Patience keeps things whole. Historians still argue whether visible paint was ordinary, beyond courts and prosperous streets, or whether most village faces kept to their own blood's color, except on feast days. Surviving recipes, they say, may tell us more about aspiration and elite practice than about everyday lanes. They also dispute how often dangerous whiteners' lead-based pastes that appear in some texts actually touched skin in this century, as opposed to living more in cautions and later memory. You listen to the debates with the same attention you give to weather, you note the claims, you keep your cloth ready, and you greet whatever arrives. You notice the scents that travel with hue. Orris and hair powder turns the air to dry violets. Rosewater walks ahead like a polite messenger. Musk announces itself as if it were a herald and expects you to bow. You incline only as far as manners require. When perfume and paint arrive together, your head inclines another degree, and your pomander helps the two make peace. If scent wishes an argument, vinegar ends it quietly from your sleeve. Bright accidents instruct better than rules. A lady kneels to adjust a buckle, forgets her rouge, and rises with a red thumbprint on the inner fold of her veil. You hide a smile because the mark is shaped like a tiny heart. A visiting cousin from the south, flushed with travel and a generous pot, leaves identical smears upon both your cheeks, proof that symmetry can be too thorough. You retire to the corner, exchange the tired triangle for a fresh one, and replace your composure the way a cap is set straight. Another fact steadies the hour. Churchmen write cautions about paints, warning against deceits of face and spirit. Yet books of manners still teach how to greet both painted and unpainted cheeks gently, without noise, without pawing at the features, and with measured breath. Practice is a softer law than sermon. You obey practice and save piety for your own mirror. You grow exact in the placement of your cheek, offering the part of the face that cleans easiest and remembers least. The bony spot just below the eye is better than the soft spot near the mouth. The latter hoards grease. Cloth agrees. After each greeting, you glance down the way a scribe checks a line before turning the page, making sure no letter blots. Your veil becomes a palimpsest the basin will read this evening and wash back to innocence. Sometimes men carry paint as well, a trace of salve to soothe dull skin after the barber's blade, a breath of scent borrowed from a wife's box, and you meet it without commentary. Vanity has a longer history than any one face. Paint, dust, wind, smoke, sun. Everyone arrives with a little weather, and your doorway is where weather meets civility and leaves its cloak. Late afternoon brings a gentler palette. Colors, tired by hours, grow shy and stop exploring. You can greet without guarding, and your linen earns a rest upon the table, corners unfolded to drink the air. The pomander, faithful witness, has gathered the day's fragrance into a single note you cannot name. Garden, hive, cupboard, chapel, each present and none victorious. Your cheek, still your cheek. Thanks the seamstress for her weighted hem, and the apothecary for his wax. You close one shutter and count triangles used, like a hospitaller counting bandages. The basin will take them back from history to cloth. You warm a little rosewater between your palms and press it to your face, not to scent yourself, only to tell the skin it is not a fortress anymore. The redness that belongs to you returns, mild and honest, Your treaty with color holds. It may parade, you may endure, and in the evening you will both be yourselves again. Order is a kind of pillow you tuck beneath a busy day so it does not bruise. You stand in the doorway and let the flow become a line that is not a line, only a gentle drift, where everyone finds a place without feeling arranged. A glance to the elder, a small turn of the shoulder for the patron who paid for winter wood, a welcoming palm to the in-laws who carry opinions like brimming baskets. Your cheek learns to be in the right place at the right time. A whole household arrives at once, knocking like a fist with many knuckles. The grandfather advances with a gait like a cart that knows the ruts by heart. The others keep a respectful distance that shrinks when doors open. You step wide with your left foot, and the room obeys your intention. Elders first, then the ones who keep the purse strings, then the kin who married in, then the young who are in a hurry to grow old. Courtesy pulls its rope without words. A steady historical fact steadies your hands. Late medieval courtesy books and household guides in France instruct that elders and social superiors are greeted before juniors, that men uncover their heads before those of higher rank, and that hosts salute notable guests at the threshold before others pass within. The same precedence orders benches at table and places in processions. Remembering this turns your little gestures into obedience rather than invention. You keep tools of precedence as a clerk keeps pens. A stool with a striped cushion lives by the door. A touch of your toe sends it forward for the priest or the guild's master, and everyone reads the sign without a word. A plate with a heel of bread and a pinch of salt appears on ceremonial mornings. Whoever receives it first understands where he stands. Your own cap settles a finger lower for matrons who expect honor to show upon your brow. People bring their orders with them. The patroness, who promised silver for the chapel window, enters like a small procession, 2 cousins behind, the accountant hovering in her shadow. You greet her first, 2 careful touches, then open your palm toward the cousins so they know the way. A journeyman bows to her and then to you. He waits for your nod before he leans in. His respect warms your cheek more than the kiss itself. You keep a private rhyme to help your memory. Age first, bread next, work after. Elders, then those who bring gifts or news, then those whose tasks will not wait. The words are yours alone. If you forget them, your jaw tightens. If you remember them, your face stays as smooth as a pond. You breathe the clove of the pomander and let the rhyme choose your next inch of motion. A quirky tidbit lives under the striped cushion. Stitched into the underside is a pale knot, tied by a superstitious ant after 2 households once quarreled over who should be greeted first. Let tempers seat themselves after bodies, she said, and fasten the knot with 3 breaths for luck. The charm is nonsense and also useful. Your toe finds the cushion's edge on anxious mornings, as if the knot could guide leather as well as feelings. Not every order announces itself. A visiting canon stands behind a modest mason and will not push to the front. You see the ring on his hand and part the air with a slight bow so he may step forward. The mason is pleased rather than piqued because he saw you see him. A wealthy widow arrives with her daughter. You greet the mother first, but turn your eyes kindly to the daughter as you step back, so both feel tall for the space of a heartbeat. Precedence is a craft of eyes as much as of cheeks. You rescue stumbles before they tangle. When 2 friends reach you together, each insisting the other go first, you offer your left cheek to one and your right cheek to the other in quick alternation, turning hierarchy into a neat figure and embarrassment into grace. When a boy runs ahead of his grandmother, you catch him with a hand that pretends to adjust his collar and send him round behind her as if you had meant only to straighten him. He grins. She does not scold. Historians still argue whether such precedents held strictly in everyday village practice or lived mostly in urban manuals and ceremonial accounts, with ordinary households bending or ignoring it when kinship and convenience suggested otherwise. Records remember processions better than doorways. You nod to the uncertainty and keep doing what works, the kind of law that survives because it fits the hand. Smells help when sight fails. Wax and clean wool often mean elders who rose before light. Ink and orris suggest clerks. Wine and cardamom whisper merchant. Linseed and lime belong to painters and masons who should not be kept cooling. You do not say any of this aloud. You let scent tug your attention toward the figure who must be greeted before the day spoils upon him. Your own body becomes a signpost. A half step back makes room for a superior. A half step forward rescues a shy neighbor from being forgotten. Your hands, palms open, borrow the authority of bread breakers and midwives, holy in their usefulness. You lift your chin a finger higher for patrons, and a finger lower for godparents. No one notices the arithmetic. Everyone feels its answer and rests inside it. There are small comedies you smooth with steadiness. A new son-in-law bows as if he were at court, tail of his chaperone sweeping the floor, and pops back up too fast, colliding with his father-in-law's pride. You slow the second kiss with a sentence about the weather so the older man's dignity can arrive. A cousin in a loud coat assumes he is first everywhere. You prove him second with such grace that he discovers the lesson only when he is already laughing. When the guild holds a feast, precedence arrives with a written order and men who believe in ink. You pin the list to the doorframe with your eyes and still watch the faces more than the names. Someone important will always be late. Someone humble will always be patient. You honor patience where you find it. It keeps a house from curdling and makes benches kinder at supper. The doorway changes shape through the day. Morning belongs to elders and work, noon to messengers and baskets, evening to farewells that forget how to end. You step into each part as if it were a different room. The pomander becomes your baton. 2 soft taps against your belt, and your hands remember their choir. There is a right and left to attend, and you mind it when you can. Right cheek first for most, left for those who trained abroad or imitate fashion from the next province. The rule bends when the lane narrows, when a basket's handle intrudes, when a child is on a hip. You do not correct baskets or children. You let the world be true and keep the peace with a smile shaped like agreement. Sometimes you refuse without refusing. A man who bullied a neighbor last market day reaches as if to claim a first honor. You turn slightly, offering him second place not as rebuke but as breeze. The way a curtain declines to be tied and still shows the window. He accepts the breeze. His neighbor accepts the dignity. The house thanks you with a silence that feels like water set back into its vessel. When the light slants and shadows write slanted versions of faces across the floor, you end as you began, with order as a pillow. You tally the day by notches, but also by how few cheeks felt misplaced. Most found their proper place. 2 did not and forgave you. 1 you rescued before he knew he needed rescuing. That is a fair score for a door and a face. You put away the stool, its hidden knot asleep. You cover the bread. You smooth the cushion. The threshold loses the press of many feet and becomes floor again. You touch the latch. The metal is warm from hands, a record smoother than ink. Tomorrow, your cheek will remember its hierarchies the way your palm remembers the broom. Practice saves everyone from bruises. The vinegar waits like a small thunder kept in a jar. You keep it near but not obvious corked, wrapped with a string that knows your fingers. Sponge sleeping in the sour dark. Most hours you prefer clove and mint, the polite garden of the day. But there are moments when the air leans heavy with old memory, and you lift the lid a finger's width and let vinegar lift you back. You do this quietly. No flourish, no grimace. The sponge rises. You give it a brief press beneath your veil, and the sharpness clears a path where worry was beginning to set its table. It is not bravery, only housekeeping for breath, for nerves, for the small theater of the door. A neighbor comes with a cough that is probably only straw dust and last night's talk. You do not read omens in every tickle. You read the angle of his hat, which wants 2 kisses and receives them. Still, after he leaves, you hold the jar in your palm and feel its cool weight the way a sailor feels the helm when the wind mutters. You do not open it yet. Calm is a decision you make, with your hand as much as with your mind. The lane carries rumors as easily as it carries baskets. Last year's fever, the winter 2 years before, when the churchyard took more names than bread could keep up with people, will count such things aloud if you let them. You keep count of vegetables and kisses and leave the rest to the ledger of bells. Nevertheless, the body remembers. Vinegar is a way of telling the body it may remember without ruling you. A steady historical fact steadies you. In 15th-century France, people lean on vinegar as a simple virtue hand wash, mouth rinse, temple pack, sponge to sniff. water to splash on floors and on herbs thought friendly to health, such as rosemary, rue, sage, and lavender, burned or worn in pomanders to sweeten air and counter the bad airs that many blame for sickness. Physicians write of it. Household books copy it. Market stalls sell it. You are not eccentric. You are ordinary in a careful way. You tend the door as if it were a small infirmary for feelings. When a stranger arrives pale from a long road, you let the pomanders speak louder and your own breath quieter. When another arrives flushed from a crowd, you add a heartbeat of distance, a gentle angle that says welcome without sharing too much of anything. Courtesy has always been a craft of precise nearness. Today it feels like an art of pleasant inches. The vinegar comes out for yourself as much as for others. The briefest touch of sour under the veil wakes the nose, reminds the throat of its work. Your shoulders forget to climb toward your ears. The linen in your hand stops trying to become a rag of worry. You taste the day again. Wool, wood smoke, a peel of orange, a thread of fish from Friday lingering in imagination only. Vinegar returns the world to its right sizes. A quirky tidbit makes the ritual friendlier. An ant once stitched 2 tiny triangles of linen with a drop of vinegar between them, then fastened the little packet inside her cap, where no one could see my secret chapel. She called it so the scent would reach her without conversation. On feast days, she replaced vinegar with rosewater, because even secret chapels deserve windows. You sometimes copy her trick when the market is thick, and voices make weather of their own. Between greetings, you let practicalities be your theology. Open the shutters just so air moves like a polite guest. Sweep the threshold twice, because dust is democracy and settles on all faces. Burn a sprig of rosemary in a shard of earthenware when the house grows quiet. The smoke rises green, and the room remembers a hillside it has never seen. Historians still argue whether rinsing coins and door latches with vinegar little everyday purifications commonly described later was a true village practice at mid-century, or a habit more typical of towns during active fear, with the quieter months relying on scent and sweeping rather than constant sour washing. The record keeps grand measures better than small ones. You make your own small record, a cleaner latch, a calmer chest, a sponge that sleeps more often than it works. That is proof enough for a doorway. Visitors bring their own remedies and tell you so, because people like to share the recipes that steady them. One swears by rue leaves tucked into the bodice, another by chewing a stem of angelica on raw mornings, a third by carrying a clove in the cheek like a monk's secret. You nod and allow every superstition the dignity of not being argued with. If a thing comforts without harm, you find it useful even when you do not adopt it. The pax-board at Mass passes from lip to lip in your mind's eye when worries begin their parade. It is a way of giving peace without confusion, and you imitate it at the door when crowds gather. You hold your body like a wooden thing that has been kissed by many and still remains itself. Your cheek is not a tally of dangers. It is a place courtesy visits and departs. Vinegar helps you remember this with its neat, racing sentence. You keep the jar where you can reach it with eyes closed. The cork knows your grip. The string knows your knot. A quick lift, a quiet press, a breath, a return. No one needs see. You do not wish to instruct by example or to turn greetings into apothecary lessons. You wish only to keep your voice from sounding like fear when you say good morning. There are days when you do not touch the vinegar at all and feel virtuous for it. There are other days when you leave a faint ring of sour on the cloth and feel practical. You do not make a religion of either outcome. The face asks for care. The door asks for kindness. The lane asks for patience. Vinegar, clove, mint, wax, these are small tools that let hands keep doing what they promised. A merchant returning from a busier town brings news that makes the room grow attentive, as rooms do when news tries to be larger than the furniture. You shorten the greeting by a breath and lengthen the smile by the same amount. He leaves a sigh behind. You uncork the jar and let the sigh leave as well. If fear wishes to sit, it can sit on the threshold outside until it learns its manners. By late afternoon, the sun warms the lintel enough to smell like wood again. The days-old apprehensions dry the way wet cloaks do, still present, but no longer trying to climb your neck. You greet a widow with the gentlest touch. then a child whose nose has invented a new sort of river, then a mason who brings lime on his sleeves and jokes about being dustier than death. You do not laugh at the word, but you allow the lime its harmless impertinence. Vinegar is not invited to this part. Rosemary is. Before the shutters close, you wash the sponge in fresh vinegar and press the liquid back into the jar with a spoon, the way you would coax a stubborn thought back into sense. Cork, tie, tuck away. The string makes its little circle around the neck of the jar like a collar on a polite dog. You wipe the outside dry so it will not mark your sleeve tomorrow. Everything has its place again. You sit a moment by the hearth, holding the jar the way one holds a small, useful book. You do not need to read it now. It has done its speaking for the day. The worry that pressed your chest after the first rumor met its match and learned to walk on. Your cheek stayed hospitable. Your breath kept its errands. You put the jar on the shelf between the rosewater and the salt, as if it were simply another ingredient the house knows sour, honest, plain, and ready. Children arrive like weather that has remembered to put on shoes. You hear them before you see them, a patter on the stones, a whistle that was not taught, a high voice asking a question no one will answer until it repeats itself 3 times. Then they stand at the threshold in small knots, some held by hands, some holding baskets, some already smudged with the morning's decisions. Your cheek prepares with the same calm you keep for elders, only softer at the edges, because nothing kisses so earnestly or so stickily as a child. Breakfast tells its story upon their faces. A gloss of honey bright as late afternoon runs from lip to chin on the youngest, who has not learned what a cloth is for. Another brags of warm milk by the pale mustache he wears, like a knight's first attempt at pride. A third bears the honorable badge of porridge, oats declaring themselves upon his sleeve with the certainty of true believers. You meet each herald with order. Your hand goes first. Palm out, a friendly door. Pat the hand, dear heart. Pat the hand before the face. The smallest ones obey, delighted by the permission to press. The stickiness chooses your knuckles instead of your cheek. This is victory of a quiet kind. You lower yourself a finger, because children aim for height and rarely find it. Your cheek tilts to meet their courage halfway, and your veil's weighted hem, faithful conspirator, slides the bright traces downward if contact wins the argument. You smile with your eyes more than your mouth. Mouths are traitors in sticky company. When the kiss lands, it is fast and honest, the way birds land. You breathe through your nose and think kindly of ash-lye in evening. A steady historical fact steadies your patience. In 15th century France, morning food for many households is simple bread with a little cheese, or sops of bread softened in warm drink, and for children sometimes milk if the cow is kind, while honey sweetens where it can, sugar being dear and saved for feast or remedy. Knowing that, you forgive the golden fingerprints on your doorframe as the signatures of a supply that was generous today. The parents apologize as if politeness were a broom. He is learning. They say, she forgot, they say. You nod and bring the linen to its appointed task. No scolding in it, only a small eraser that believes in second chances. The cloth has learned the taste of pear conserve, the stubbornness of quince, paste the firm candy some towns press into little boxes for gifts, and the way milk, with time, decides to become a new country altogether. You catch these stories early, before they begin their transformations. Children's greetings teach you to read eyes rather than cheeks. Their faces say everything at once: delight, fear, a plan. One approaches with the ferocity of a sparrow defending a crumb, and lands a kiss with admirable accuracy. You grant a second because ferocity deserves reward when it chooses tenderness. Another stops short, overwhelmed by the geometry of adults, and offers you the crown of his head instead. You bless the hair with your palm and call it done. Not every ritual requires the exact place to be true. Your pomander, surprising ally, earns its keep with the young. Clove and orange turn a sticky bravery into laughter. They lean to sniff and forget to smear. You lower the orange to their height and let them lift on their toes to meet it. And in that rising, the excess sweetness of breakfast loses its urge to travel. Beeswax holds the line across your lips. A low fence no lamb can jump. A quirky tidbit makes you kinder still. An old nurse once swore that rubbing the tiniest smear of honey upon a child's lip on name They help the tongue grow pleasant, so words will come out sweet, she said, tapping the spoon. She paired it with a pinch of salt at the year's turn, so the child would learn to love both truth and kindness. You do not argue with old nurses. They have wrestled more weather than you have met. When a name day child arrives glittering with well-wishers and a ceremonial stickiness, you greet the nurse with a look that says you know her art and will work beside it. Historians still argue whether a morning meal was considered proper for everyone in this century, or chiefly for children, laborers, and the unwell, some polite writers sniffing at breakfast, as if it were an indulgence, even as market habits and household notes suggest many mouths met bread before noon. You let the ink have its debate. The stoop before you is proof enough. The small have eaten, and so have those who carry them. There are skills you only practice with children. You keep a rescue pin ready for laces that come untied at the worst moment, because a loose lace turns a greeting into a tumble. You pronounce names carefully, letting the child's face confirm you have found the right shape. You lower your voice to where secrets live, and the door becomes a place where no one hurries after the kiss. A brave child glows in that pause. A shy one steadies. Household foods invent half your problems and half your salvations. Honey lingers. A dampened corner of linen persuades it to leave. Milk pleads. A dry corner silences it better. Porridge flakes give up at the mere sight of cloth. Fruit syrups plum. Quince write poems on silk. Your weighted hem edits them back to prose. You praise the seamstress again in your heart for those hidden grains that teach the veil to fall away from trouble. One small boy arrives wrapped in loyalty to a wooden horse as big as his forearm. The horse receives its own kiss after you do, leaving a peanut of porridge upon its painted nose. You dab the toy's face without changing your expression. To keep a child's dignity is a kind of housekeeping too. Later, a girl comes with a rag doll, whose hair remembers every stew it has leaned near. The doll waits in her elbow while she leans toward you like a brave plant. You greet the plant gently. The doll approves. Another study fact soothes the day's edge. Many households teach children to touch elders' hands or sleeves before cheek kissing, especially when faces are busy or the lane is crowded. A touch may stand in for a kiss without offense. If offered with eyes that mean it. You rely on this custom more than once when sticky courage would otherwise drown ceremony. Hand first, then cheek if needed. The rule holds. Accidents still find you. A child coughs exactly at greeting and writes a short, unwelcome sentence on your veil. You do not flinch. You have seen worse words. Vinegar waits in its jar if you need its sharp grammar. Another child sneezes, looks betrayed by his own weather, and begins to cry. You offer him the pomander to smell and a corner of cloth to hold, and the crying takes a smaller shape, one you can fold back into his day. Parents look relieved when nothing is made heavy. You keep it light not to hide the world, but to let courtesy be the road. It is meant to be a stretch of ground safe for small feet. You give each family their number of kisses, adjusting for height and sugar, and watch the lane swallow them as they go on to errands. The doorway breathes again, bearing one more thin glaze of humanity. You will wash away at dusk. By late morning, the troop of the young thins. A quiet follows like the back of a tide. You inspect the treaty lines, wax still holding, veil still respectful, linen corners now needing the basin's counsel. Your knuckles shine with a few bright fingerprints that will make you laugh later. You touch the tally stick and give it now a notch for patience, rather than for faces. Patience for small hands that aim true and almost always arrive covered with proof of breakfast. When noon slackens the day, a mother returns to say the child you steadied has stopped crying and is now telling everyone how brave he is. You nod and keep the news in your chest like a coin. Coin is coin, whether metal or words. You shut the door for a moment, rinse your fingers, warm the wax, and set your face again to ordinary kindness. The next knock will be taller, less sticky, and no braver. Rain makes everyone honest. Cloaks drop their pretenses. Wool remembers its first sheep, and every embrace arrives carrying a small winter. You hear it before you feel it, the hiss on slate, the uneven drum on shutters, the talk the gutter makes when it remembers its work. You set the reed mat straighter, push the brazier a hand's breadth farther from the door, and tie your patience to your belt with a pomander. They come shining with wet. A miller first, cloak the color of ash, edges dark as river stone. Then a girl with a basket under her mantle, water ticking from the mantle's point like a clock that forgot pride. You meet each with a half-step inward so the drip lands on floor, not you. Your cheek learns a colder angle, the kiss quick and careful, a small guest who wipes his feet. The smell is the weather's handwriting, damp wool, wet bark, iron in the air, a thread of smoke bullied thin by the rain and then forgiven. You raise the orange for clove and garden, because rain magnifies everything including fish left over from yesterday, and the honest onion that hid itself badly at noon. Beeswax along your lip holds, as if it were made for this because it was. A steady historical fact stands at your shoulder like a reasonable cousin. In 15th century France, most people meet rain with what they already wear: fulled wool cloaks and hoods, chaperones thrown forward like sensible roofs, mantles pulled close. Umbrellas are not companions of the street, more rumor than tool. An oiled or waxed cloth belongs to the lucky, the careful, or the well-supplied. Broadcloth fullers earn their bread by making wool close and almost weatherproof. Lanolin and good weaving turn a downpour into a manageable insult. You hold to this as you hold to the latch. The century trusts cloth more than contrivance. Cloaks behave like tired dogs when they are wet. They try to sit on everything. You give them a place peg by the door, a spare cane to lift a dragging hem away from the brazier's reach. You learn to pinch a fold between finger and thumb as you lean in, keeping 2 hands worth of rain from coming along for the kiss. The greeting becomes an archery of inches. The bow is you, the arrow, courtesy. The target, a dry thumbprint of cheek between hood and drip. The river finds your doorway, even if the river itself is streets away. Wind brings it the taste of stone that has forgotten heat, the quiet brag of current. Visitors from the quay smell more like oars than usual. You keep vinegar corked. Sharpness has already presented its credentials. Rosemary is kinder. You lay a sprig on the brazier and let it tell wet wool that all will be well after the towel and the line. You collect rain rules while the day writes them. Keep the mat angled so channels guide the water away from feet that will slip. Trade the outer triangle of linen for a drier inner one more often than pride would like. Tilt your cheek to meet the dry edge of a hood, not the fold that drinks. Speak first, so lips do not hurry. Allow the kiss to be almost air, and call that honest. A quirky tidbit warms the edge of the chill. A carter once taught you to lay a cabbage leaf beneath your cap on wet days. The garden is better at roofs than we are, he said. And absurd as it looks, the leaf persuades stray drips to choose green instead of scalp. You do not do this at the door. You do it when the market runs long and the sky pretends it has all afternoon. The trick has saved your temper twice, and your hairline more often. The floor learns geography in rain. A little river braids itself from threshold to hearth before you can deny it. You keep a scoop of sand by the broom and build a small levee, a child's wall that works well enough for grown problems. Visitors notice and adjust their feet. Your house thanks you with fewer sighs. Historians still argue whether people in these years commonly treated everyday cloaks with wax or oil outside of guilds and soldiers. Some records praising rain cloaks suggest rare expense. Others hint that thrifty households greased hems and shoulders when they could. They also quarrel over when handheld rain. Shades began to appear beyond ceremony. You let them argue while you mind the actual drip falling off a neighbor's hood. Paper can afford to be dry. You learn the flavors of wet. There is the pure rain that makes everyone smell like stone and field. There is the city rain that finds gutters first and comes to you carrying yesterday's plans. There is the rain that has spent time on a roof and tastes faintly of smoke and old leaves. Each asks a different angle of your face. Each receives the same small mercy. Quick touch, warm eyes, retreat. Damp kisses bring gentle comedy. A young man bows too low. Water runs from his hood's peak and baptizes his own nose. He grins because he cannot pretend otherwise. You hand him a square of linen and pretend you lent it for a philosophical purpose. An old woman shakes herself like a cat at the threshold, then apologizes to the broom. You tell her the broom enjoys attention, and she believes you because she wants to. You keep an ear for illness without inviting it to sit. A sneeze that sounds more like dust than dread earns a blessing and a seat by the door. A cough that worries you earns more space and the pomanders higher watchfulness. You are not a physician. You are a door with a mind. Doors are allowed to think about drafts. Another steady fact to comfort your wrists. Many market towns keep covered places the halls and porches where stalls cluster out of the weather, so comings and goings in rain fall into a slower rhythm. Greetings stretch in those places or shrink into nods at the edge of shelter. You imitate the hall by stepping half a pace back, turning your threshold into a borrowed porch. Everyone is grateful when a house copies a town's kindness. Sodden mustaches are easier than waxed ones. They have surrendered their pride and can be guided without debate. You angle beards toward your veil's weighted edge. Water prefers to follow gravity rather than argue. The seamstress's hidden grains earn their keep twice over today, teaching cloth to fall away from trouble, so your cheek need not negotiate with the stream. Between visitors, you doctor the room. A fresh log burns too sulky in this weather. You choose older wood that is content to be simple heat. A pot of water on the hearth keeps the air from becoming a quarrel between smoke and damp. You lay cloaks on chairs like sleeping dogs and resist the urge to pet them. They will be friendlier when they wake. The tally stick receives notches that feel colder under your thumb. Faces are fewer when rain prevails, but each requires more care. Your jaw hinge complains in a new accent the vowel of chill, not fatigue, and you answer with the warmed pebble the carter taught you to keep. Stone again saves the day. Roof, road, pebble, hearth, all patient. When the shower slackens and the sky repents, everything smells briefly of clean coin. Water withdraws its argument and leaves brightness in its place, the kind that makes puddles into little mirrors, showing a house that has done its job. You open the shutter a little wider and let light look at the damp corners until they decide to be corners again. The last wet cloak of afternoon belongs to a child who has become pond and frog in equal measure. He presents his cheek with the gravity of a knight. You accept, very lightly, and point him toward the mat, as if it were a new country worth exploring. His mother thanks you without words. The cabbage leaf under your cap, forgotten until now, crinkles politely when you smile. You decide the garden has done good work. By evening, the pegs along the wall look like a line of captured clouds. You press each cloak's shoulder to coax more water down and into the basin you've set like a modest lake. The brazier hums. Your cheek is dry again. Your wax is not surrendered, and the door has transformed a day's weather into small courtesies and sand. You have not argued with rain. You have welcomed people who brought it with them. That feels like victory enough. Feast days stretch the lane wider than it is. Banners wake before people do, cloth already talking on its poles, while the bell counts its bright coins into the air. You open the door, and the street steps toward you wearing its best sprigs tucked into caps. Ribbons obedient for once, boots scrubbed almost to innocence. Your threshold becomes a little key where a festival tide comes in, not with waves but with cheeks, endless cheeks, each expecting the same soft ceremony as if it were the only one. You prepare like a cook who knows many guests are coming. 2 linens today, not one folded in triangles on the table, the other hidden in your sleeve. A fresh thread of beeswax across the seam of your mouth, patient and thin. The pomander high. Cloves work as well on feast perfumes as on fast day fish. A cup of watered wine sits by the hearth to bring your breath back when the river runs too fast. You shake your fingers loose, the way a scribe loosens his hand before a long passage. You will write the same sentence on many faces. The first wave is early kin from outside the walls, who slept on benches and pallets, glad to announce they made it. They kiss like people who have earned the day. 1, 2, sometimes 3, the count set by miles rather than by rules. You steer with a palm here, a tilt there, saving your jaw from zeal without dimming it. You notice how travel dresses a mouth, smoke from road inns, apples from a pocket, basil that escaped a traveler's cheese. Each scent bows and passes on. A steady historical fact steadies your patience. The 15th century calendar in France brims with feasts, holy days of obligation, great solemnities, and the patronal days of parishes and guilds, so processions with banners, candles, and reliquaries are common sights. Markets swell to match, and households dress the door with extra civility. Knowing this, you treat the crowd not as accident, but as custom with its best shoes on. By mid-morning, the procession's tail becomes your front step. Wax drips cool on men's fingers. Incense in their clothes pretends it belongs to them. Confraternity hoods pass. Then neighbors without hoods who still know the hymns. Your cheek learns to move like a metronome. Touch, breathe, turn. Touch, breathe, turn. You alternate sides to share the ache. Right, left, right, left. A quiet dance that keeps your jaw from sulking. When someone misremembers the count, you offer a pause, shaped like grace, and let the mistake end itself. Feast day fabrics have opinions. Velvet wants to shed little shadows on your veil. Brocade wishes to be admired before anyone earns a kiss from it. You humor the cloth with your eyes and greet the person with your cheek. The weighted hem your seamstress hid earns double wages today, teaching rouge and wine and the occasional pastry crumb to slip downward instead of joining your story. The broom waits, delighted to gather what pride leaves behind. A quirky tidbit steadies your humor. After Epiphany, a friend gave you the fev, the little bean from the king cake where he was made king for a night. He told you to tuck it in your pouch on crowd days, so luck will choose you in the queue. You don't believe in beans that govern doorways, but the smoothness in your pocket feels like a small ally when the room forgets to have edges. Visitors bring styles of greeting like songs from their parishes. A woman from the next market town touches cheeks fast, as if she were counting bells. A guildsman bows as if the street were a choir stall, and kisses with measured notes. A soldier on leave presses a fraction too firmly, and then apologizes with the chivalry of a pastry. You angle him toward your veil's obedient edge and call it mended. Someone smells of hypocrisy spiced wine warmed somewhere and leaves a faint cinnamon memory that your pomander edits kindly. Historians still argue whether these crowds made cheek kissing more frequent among strangers, or if processional order and clerical eyes encouraged bows, hand touches, and nods instead. With fuller embraces kept to kin and familiar households, the records celebrate banners and relics more than doorways. You let the doubt walk beside the drum. Your job is simpler. Greet what arrives. Create a little harbor where ritual can dock without scraping. You adopt rules built from practice. Speak first, so lips do less work, and breath sits tidily in the sentence. Keep a shoulder's breadth between you and the nearest lamp. Tallow wants to sign your veil in festival script. Drink a sip of water every 10 faces. Thirst turns patience into sharpness. Hand the cushion forward for the parish elder, as if it always meant to be there. Slide the vinegar jar an inch closer, just in case a rumor walks in with the next hat. There are moments when the press becomes a comedy that only your calm keeps from remembering itself as trouble. Two cousins arrive together, both wearing caps with feathers that wish to duel. You lower your head a finger's breadth, and the feathers bow to the doorframe instead of to your nose. A child, in festival blue, tries to count kisses on his own face with a wet finger after each one. You smile with your eyes so he feels correct whether he reaches 2 or 3. The long line teaches economy. Your cheek gives the warm part that cleans easiest. Your hands become traffic, one palm inviting, one palm dismissing gently like a pair of gates that never quite shut. Your eyes do more speaking than your mouth does. Eyes can say you next and you first at once. You are astonished by how much kindness fits into looks when voices would only tangle. Another steady fact justifies your brief retreats. On great feasts, the midday table often grows long and the wine less shy. Towns pour hypocrisy or spiced ale, and the peace after Mass moves from pax-board to parlors and porches. After the bell, greetings return heavier, sweeter, less precise. You step half a pace inward then, and guide more with your hands, less with your face. The door learns to be a porch. The porch learns to be patient. The scholarly uncertainty follows at your elbow. Did layfolk in your century kiss the pax everywhere by now? Or did many parishes still trade the peace hand to hand, cheek to cheek, depending on means and custom? Accounts contradict each other with the confidence of saints. You hold both ideas in your head the way you hold 2 linens, one for what the book says, one for what the street insists upon. Afternoon loosens its belt. Laughter grows a little louder. Songs try their voices in corners of the lane not meant for choirs. You keep the pomander close and your breath slow. You rescue a hat that falls before it can teach a candle to misbehave. You accept 3 rapid kisses from a godmother who has made herself generous with pudding and opinion. Your jaw reminds you that bones cannot be saints forever. You touch the warmed pebble to the hinge, and it forgives you for making it ring all day. Between endless cheeks, you snatch a crumb of cheese, 2 sips of watered wine, and a smell of rosemary smoking on the brazier. These are the rungs on a ladder you climb until the sun begins to think of lower windows. The bean in your pocket grows warm. You decide its luck is mostly that it gives your fingers a place to rest, other than on the latch. Toward evening, the tide turns. The same faces come back brighter or duller depending on their wine, and goodbyes start to argue with themselves about how long they should be. You prepare Section 29's patients' early farewells are feasts of their own. But for now you keep the metronome true. Touch, breathe, turn. You take secret pleasure in every greeting that lands cleanly, leaves lightly, and does not ask you to repair it. When the last banner loses its stiffness, and the street begins to remember being a street, you count triangles used, and find triumph in small sums. The linens are busy but not defeated. The wax's little border still stands. The broom has earned a kind word. Most important of all, no one left your threshold feeling unwelcomed, while you saved your own face from becoming a blotter for other people's joy. That is feast day arithmetic you can live with. You shut the door a finger, not a hand. The lane still murmurs, and it is pleasant to listen while your cheek stops ringing. You rub the pebble along the hinge of bone, sip the last of the watered wine, and let the pomanders clove turn the room from festival back into house. Tomorrow the banners will sleep, but the door will work as it always does. You tidy your tools and thank the bean for its companionship, foolish and faithful. The day has had a lot of cheek, and you have given it yours without losing it. Mistakes arrive with pockets full of goodwill. A guest leans in for one more kiss than the lane allows, and you answer with air. A small pause, a half breath, a smile that closes the ledger without showing the book. Your cheek withdraws by a finger's width. Their lips meet politeness itself. The extra counts itself and goes home. A steady historical fact steadies your calm. Courtesy books circulating in 15th century France praise restrained greetings, gentle cheek kisses among kin and familiar company, without noise, without pressing, with precedence observed. You let that page hold your spine while you improvise. A light laugh, a guiding palm at a shoulder, a glance toward the next arrival, these end the arithmetic kindly. You keep a private device, the ring tap. At the second kiss, you touch your third finger to the belt. 2 is enough. If nerves try for a third, the finger remembers for you. It is a homely metronome, taught by an aunt who counted everything from loaves to tempers. Historians still argue whether fixed maps of kiss counts existed in your century 2 here, 3 there, or whether later habits were folded backward onto earlier days, with household custom and occasion doing more work than province. While they quarrel over borders on paper, you mend borders in air. There are other small rescues. A patron trained to 3 forgets himself and offers 1. You return a very light second, and then air for the third, and everyone believes they succeeded. An elderly aunt's affection outruns math. You steer her third onto veil edge, where your weighted hem escorts rouge downward like rain on slate. A cousin from the south begins a brave fourth. You place the pomander between faces as if to admire it, and the orange becomes a period. Another steady practice helps. At Mass, the pax-board passes peace on wood, not cheeks, saving both order and dignity. You imagine its calm handle between you and any overlong zeal. Wood steadies breath. Quirks keep the day friendly. A neighbor swears by reciting a psalm line inside her head to stop at 2. She never reaches the third word. A clerk insists on tapping his chaperone's tail. Liripipe behave before leaning in, as if the hat might count for him. You indulge both superstitions. They do less harm than mustard. When you fail, and you allow yourself 2 failures a week, you repair without drama. If you meet an intended air kiss, your linen erases evidence, and your mouth offers weather. If you end too early, your hand invites again, as if you meant to give a gift, not a correction. By dusk, your tally stick earns notches for salvage rather than faces. 1 for the journeyman rescued from zeal, 1 for the aunt spared embarrassment, one for yourself for choosing air over bruise. It is a good arithmetic for a house that greets more hearts than it kisses. You keep a little garden under your sleeve, so mouths meet leaves before they meet you. A thumb of rosemary rubbed warm at your wrist, a pinch of orris powder for gloves, a sprig of mint ready to bruise quiet botanicals that persuade breath to be polite. Your palms carry violets, ghost, and kitchen hills. When you steer a shoulder, the touch smells like drawers just opened in spring. A steady historical fact steadies the habit. 15th century French households and apothecaries make simple scents rose and rosemary waters, lavender, orris for gloves and scatter-strewing herbs on floors, pomanders and sweet bags, ride belts and sleeves. Gardens and shops alike prepare the air for company. Quirks travel with recipes. A glover told you to rub seams with lemon peel, so leather won't argue with hands. Lemons are exotic guests here. Still, the gloves did smile for a week. Another neighbor praises Hungary water, a rosemary distillation rumored to console queens and knees alike. You simply rub plain rosemary at the jaw hinge and find it honest. Historians still argue whether perfumed gloves soaked with rare musk had yet strayed widely into French hands in your century, or whether powders, waters, and herb sachets did most of the work, while lavish scents waited for courts. They also debate how common floor herbs were outside great halls. You let scholars keep their ledgers, your sleeve keeps lavender. You keep scent modest. A brush of wrist to veil's edge lays a narrow lane of green the kiss can walk down. The pomander rises only when needed. Vinegar sleeps unless panic wakes it. Your brazier steams a spoon of rosemary water on damp afternoons. The room remembers hills instead of inns. Sometimes breath arrives proud of its kitchen. You do not scold stew. You answer with orris and a question that shortens the kiss to a friendly hinge. If perfume precedes its wearer by a yard, you tilt toward the bony place under the eye, where scents cannot take a chair. Your weighted hem carries paint downward. Ash-lye will hear the story later. Another steady fact is domestic. Rose water and rosemary wash hands before table. Whiteboards ease heads. Recipes live in household books and still rooms, not only in shops. Scent is a tool, not a trumpet. Scholarly uncertainty lingers in sleeves. Were sweet bags pinned in girdles common among townsfolk, or mostly a richer closet's habit? Inventories argue both ways. You touch the tiny sachet sewn inside your cuff-crushed lavender, and a clove, and decide the room's mood is proof enough. By evening the door has smelled of clove and bread, wool and rain, with rosemary tying them together. Two children ask why your house is a plant. Plants are polite, you say, and they believe you. The herbs return to their jars. Your cheek has met many mouths and still smells like restraint. Sunday puts a slow hinge on the morning. Bells divide the light. Incense softens edges. You sit half a bench from the aisle and wait for the pax-wood or silver with a handle, kissed at the altar and carried to the people so peace can travel without tangling mouths. When it reaches you, the gilding is cool with resin and old smoke. You kiss lightly and feel your shoulders lower, as if someone swept the floor inside your chest. A steady historical fact steadies you. By the 15th century, the pax-board osculatorium is commonly used in many French parishes to distribute the kiss of peace in order first clergy, then laity, lips placed on an object rather than one another. Inventories list them. Rubrics teach the bearer's turns. Worn edges testify to many mouths. Quirk. Cousins once swore a town set a tiny mirror beneath the pax's ornament, so each person glimpsed their face before kissing peace to the person you bring. If it is only traveler's embroidery, it is still a tidy sermon. Historians still argue how widely the pax had spread by mid-century, whether plague fears hastened adoption, and whether women and men kissed the same board everywhere, or in parallel by local custom. While pages disagree, the handle in your hand is proof enough for today. You notice the bearer's craft tilting toward each kisser, a discreet wipe with a linen that behaves like a stage curtain, precedence observed without making a parade. It is the same arithmetic you practice at home, spoken in church. You carry the lesson back to your door. A guest leans with zeal. You imagine wood between you, offer air where trouble would be, and pass peace along with oranges and pauses. Boards, pomanders, and beeswax, all small handles that keep edges from fraying. Midday paints mouths with stew. Lamb and onions make a soft moon. Goose tries to sign your veil. Mustard writes its memoirs on anything. You answer with angles. Offer the bony place under the eye. Keep the beeswax border firm. Let the weighted hem escort shine downward like rain on slate. A steady historical fact steadies your basin. The main meal often comes at noon pottage or meat on bread trenchers that soak sauces. Afterward, households bring ewer and towel for hands, sometimes scented when purse permits. Gloss on lips is not sin. It is dinner traveling without a plate. Quirk, an old carver taught the salt crust cure. Rub the heel with a pinch of salt and touch it to the mouth before rising so the bread drinks the feast. His grandchildren often arrive with a sober line where gloss meant to be. Your linen loves that family. Historians still argue how long bread trenchers endured in humbler houses before wood crowded them out, and how often alms trenchers truly went to the poor as rule rather than story. They also quarrel over whether dinner was always noon and super dusk, or whether seasons shifted names. You let ink debate. You watch faces to tell the hour. Devices make mercy easy. Ask a question while leaning. Answering breath shortens contact. Offer your right cheek to mustaches that act like wicks. Steer beards to the hem that slides. Children sniff the pomander and forget to decorate you. Vinegar stays corked. Rosemary over the brazier edits the room back toward garden. By late afternoon, mustard leaves two bright boasts on your veil, and saffron fades to rumor. The cloth reports to ash-lye. The bowl writes a thin broth of the day down the drain. Your cheek returns to plain bread. Whispers use the greeting like a key. Cheek touches, breath brushes, and news tries to move in. You keep the ear a finger behind the cheek, so mouths must cross your eyes. People behave better when reminded you are not a cupboard. The pomander rises like a hedge. Orange and clove make a garden between words. A steady historical fact steadies your patience. Village tidings travel by voice criers in squares, notices at church doors, marriage banns read thrice on Sundays so objections may be heard, so porches and thresholds become post. When someone breathes, the banns were read, you are hearing parish order, not only mischief. Quirk, an ant stitched a blue thread inside your cap, for modesty of ears. A tug to remind you not to lean too far. You do not worship threads, but the nudge saves many inches and at least 3 secrets a week. Historians still argue whether quiet thresholds did most semi-private business debts soothed, bargains begun, or whether taverns and market sheds bore the load, while doors handled greetings. Records prefer loudness. Your ear prefers limits. You keep towel phrases. God grant them peace. Dries talk. I hope it sorts itself. Folds it. The second bell announces you did not hear the second detail. If a whisper tries to become a sermon about a neighbor, you imagine the church packs between you wood, where your cheek would be, and it bumps the border and loses interest. Sometimes a whisper deserves landing. The widow needs wood. You let that one stay. You light a mental candle and keep your tongue still. Then rose water behind the ear, rosemary on the wrist, and the stream is the stream again. Bread steadies a mouth before it meets a cheek. You keep a small loaf near the latch and a covered pinch of salt, so humility has something to hold. A heel passed first makes edges round. Crumbs fall where brooms live, not onto skin. A steady historical fact steadies the plate. Bread anchors every table. Salt is dear, measured and taxed under the gabelle. And on Sundays, many parishes share pain beneath blessed bread pew to pew, as a sign of fellowship. With bread in hand, a kiss belongs to the same century as manners. Quirk, your salt spoon has a fox carved on its end, so the salt won't run off, the mason joked. Children hold it solemnly. Their lips land cleaner afterward, as if foxes taught care. Historians still argue whether a formal bread and salt welcome truly belonged at ordinary French thresholds in your time, or mostly to richer halls, with villages offering bread alone, wine, or simply a bench. The parish's blessed loaf may have been the week's chief ritual. You acknowledge the uncertainty and keep what works under your lintel. Practice is precise. Knife cuts heels first. A sparrow-folded napkin waits for crumbs. A bowl stands for fingers that remember pots too well. Salt is a pinch, not a thirst. If someone arrives with sauce shining, you pass the heel and say, "Taste, then rest." Children get the smallest slice and most praise. The pinch wakes tongues and hushes grease. The veil's weighted hem escorts stray crumbs downward. Ash-lye will finish the lesson at dusk. The loaf thins to a crescent by evening, and your cheek stays clean of the day's hunger. Road dust gives every traveler the same complexion. It murmurs on leather, rasps in cloak folds, and tries to settle on your face like a pale glove. You sprinkle the threshold, lay a sprig of thyme across the bowl, and teach grit to choose stone over skin. A steady historical fact steadies your sweep. Outside the best paved squares, many streets and parish roads are beaten earth, with cobbles laid where duty and purse allow. Corvée labor mends ruts, and pilgrimage ways spread fine soil like flour across clothing and lips. Dust is geography with opinions. Quirk. A drover keeps a goose feather in his cap for cheek dusting. Let the bird do it. You keep one by the door for children and uncles who carry half a lane on their sleeves. A swift flick saves linen and dignity. Historians still argue how far cobbling spread beyond main streets before later centuries gave more stone, and whether small places watered rutted ways in summer as steadily as towns did markets. Pages remember taxes better than housewives' sprinkles. You sprinkle anyway. The air agrees. You lift, not rub, touch, hold, take away. Rubbing makes paste that believes it belongs. Bread helps too. A heel before greeting persuades dust to choose crumbs over cheeks. The pomander edits lime and Killine road smells. Rosemary smoke reminds the room of hills. Your blue thread tugs behind the ear when whispers arrive powdery. You keep the ear behind the cheek so grit follows eyes, not breath. At day's end, you shake the veil in the yard. The last light pulls a small cloud out and lays it harmless on the earth it came from. Clove belongs to both apothecary and cheek. You taste it in the lane when toothaches look for mercy neighbors, tuck a bud in the mouth to numb the sore and sweeten courage before leaning in. Clove is honest. It does not whisper, it declares. A steady historical fact steadies your understanding. Imported spices, cloves, cinnamon, ginger circulate through 15th century French towns via merchants and apothecaries. Pharmacopoeias note cloves' warming and pain-easing virtues, and kitchen books tuck it into sauces and hippocras. A bud can travel from remedy to recipe to greeting in a single morning. Quirk. Children make a game called King's Tooth. Whoever keeps a clove tucked longest wins a dried plum. The champion arrives fragrant and triumphant and forgets to count kisses. Your veil thanks the contest. Historians still argue how commonly such spices reached village mouths beyond feast days. Did rural shelves keep clove as a household remedy? Or did most borrow it only by neighborly pinch, with true supply clustered in towns? Prices, routes, and wills disagree. Your proof is noses. Some days smell like markets, some like purses. You keep tools for spice weather. The pomander lowers clove, meeting clove softens rather than sharpens. Vinegar remains corked, sour and spice quarrel. A sip of water waits for tongues over, brave with buds. Bread returns the mouth to sense. When a zealot chews two at once, you offer air on the second kiss. Mercy for your cheek, victory for his pride. By evening the room has been a cupboard mint, clove, rosemary braided through wool and talk. Your jaw hinge enjoys a dab of simple salve oil and beeswax. With a breath of sage and the day's spice becomes memory rather than occupation. Burgundy sends bows that arrive before faces. A visiting courtier conducts a small play at your lintel chaperone swept like a tide. Cloak arranged to display its conscience. Cheek delayed by flourish. You wait out the choreography and present the efficient part of your face. The kiss lands. The feather sighs. A steady historical fact steadies your patience. The Burgundian court in the 15th century is famous for elaborate dress, ceremony, and influence high hennons, rich fabrics, and low bows that teach towns new gestures. Fashion travels faster than carts. Quirk. A neighbor practices court bows with a cabbage for audience. He ties his hat's tail liripipe so it will not whip the soup or your veil. The cabbage watches without applause. You are grateful anyway. Historians still argue how deeply courtly etiquette seeped into village thresholds. Did rural manners mimic bows beyond feast weeks? Or did daily greetings stay brisk while courts played theater? Paintings flatter. Rents and chores shorten performances. Your doorway prefers competent angles to courtesies that collide with door frames. You adjust for grandeur without surrendering your jaw. Let the bow end before the cheek begins. Put your palm lightly to a sleeve to steer flourish away from candle and nose. Praise the cloth with your eyes so the person accepts a shorter greeting. Your weighted hem guards against brocade's pride. Ash-lye will adjudicate any rouge. When the courtier goes, the lane returns to wooden clogs and honest caps. You remember that even princes must meet the same beeswax border as fishermen. Courtesy is a plainer kingdom than fashion admits. Refusing a kiss without wounding pride is a household art. A sniff, a hand to chest, a low bow, I have a chill, and goodwill lands at a safe distance. You preserve both face and feeling, which is the goal on days when breath should not be shared. A steady historical fact steadies your choice. People in your century lean on simple preventions when illness whispers vinegar to rinse hands and mouth, posies and pomanders against bad airs, space at church during worry. Courtesy manuals allow modest reserve in greeting when health is unsettled. You are not unkind, you are careful. Quirk. Your aunt kept a kerchief dedicated to refusals, embroidered with a tiny hair, so I may run from kisses and not from charity. She pressed it to her lip and bowed with such grace that even zealots accepted the air. Historians still argue how common it was for villagers to excuse cheek kissing outside moments of declared fear. Were polite bows a daily option, or mostly a taught response in towns and during outbreaks? Accounts like rules. Thresholds prefer instincts. You let instinct hold the hinge. You keep gentle scripts. I will not share my sniffle with you, or 2 bows today and more tomorrow. Your palm becomes a gate that closes kindly. Your eyes supply warmth, the mouth cannot. If someone insists, you borrow the church's example. The imagined pax between you, wood where cheeks would be. By evening, your refusals have saved 3 noses, 2 tempers, and your own peace. You set vinegar on the shelf like a thunder kept for later and heat rosemary water for the temples. Air has been useful. Affection has not suffered. Dusk edits faces into shadows. Tallow flares. Beeswax steadies. Rushlights gossip. And late arrivals present outlines rather than features. You lean toward voices more than toward lips, and let candle flames teach you which side of a cheek is safe. A steady historical fact steadies your caution. Households in 15th century France light evenings with tallow candles and rushlights. Churches and wealthier rooms favor beeswax. Hand lanterns and horn windows soften drafts. Light is a ration, not a river. Quirk. A neighbor swears by a little cone of tin, his snuffer engraved with a fish. He caps flames like a priest blesses bread and gives lectures to moths. He also believes a candle that sputters a greeting predicts rain. You let him keep the omen if it keeps him patient. Historians still argue how widely handheld lanterns walked ordinary lanes at night, and how late curfew bells compelled shutters in small places. Rules varied with town and watch. You work by what you can see and by what smoke allows. You move lamps a finger farther from the door. Tallow aspires to your veil like a scholar to ink. Your weighted hem remembers to slide. Your beeswax border remembers to hold. Late kisses become air amid silhouettes. Names take the place of noses. By full dark, you keep a list of small rescues. 1 feather rained away from a wick. 2 mustaches guided from flame. 3 farewells shortened by compliments to a steady candle. You close the door with the softest click and let night own its shadows. The basin reads the day aloud in stains. Rouge fades to a pink cloud. Mustard retracts its boast. Dust writes rivers of beige. Clove and wool become a thin tea that the drain drinks without comment. You work with ash-lye and patience, coaxing the veil back toward innocence. A steady historical fact steadies your hands. Medieval laundry leans on ash-lye, fuller's earth, and sun. Linens are soaked, trod, beaten with bats at streams, and blue rinsed with woad or smalt to make white look truer. Soap is dear, labor is common. Quirk. A washerwoman showed you the moon batter, 2 gentle taps of the bat for rouge. 1 stout tap for wax, none for silk hems. The moon hates shouting, she said, and her cloths always looked calmer than others. Historians still argue how often veils and caps were fully laundered in ordinary homes versus spot clean between feast days, and how much bluing traveled outside towns. You choose a middle path: dab daily, soak weekly, save beating for quarrelsome stains and weather that forgives wet. You mend as you clean, replacing the secret grains in the hem, so cloth remembers to fall away from trouble, setting a pinhead with a wool bead so it will not bite. Beeswax along your mouth waits in its tin. Soon it will make a new border. Your hands smell of lye and rosewater by turns. The house smells like a promise kept. At last the veil hangs by the hearth, faint steam rising like a pardon. Tomorrow it will meet faces again, with no memory of tonight's basin, except in the obedience, the seamstress stitched back into its edge. You count people into wood. The tally stick keeps the day honest, shallow notches for households, deeper for messengers. A slanted mark when you rescued a moment from becoming awkward. Thumb to groove, you can read the faces again with your eyes shut. A steady historical fact steadies the habit. Tally sticks serve accounts and tallies across medieval Europe, split, matched, used in markets, rents, and taxes. Notches hold numbers where ink cannot or purses will not. Wood remembers better than talk. Quirk. You borrowed a carter's trick, different notch. Ends for different provinces. Round for river folk, square for hill towns, a tiny fork for pilgrims. It is private cartography, useful only to your thumb and temper. Historians still argue how much such sticks were used inside households for domestic reckoning rather than informal tallies, and whether women kept parallel records in cloth and habit instead of wood. Diaries are rare. Sticks survive without explanations. You are content with yours as a modest ledger of courtesy. The stick also counsels thrift. Too many deep cuts warn that zeal has outrun sense. A smooth span means the day spared your jaw. You rub a drop of oil into the wood when the grain feels thirsty. Care for the record, care for the greeter. By candle's end, you add a last notch for patience and lay the stick beside the broom. Tomorrow it will be a ruler for your smile again, measuring nothing anyone can sell and everything that keeps a house from fraying. Books of manners live beside brooms. You keep sayings from the old Paris household guide, the one that teaches a wife to rule herself, mind servants, and flavor soups as a quiet rope across the day. Greet without noise. Seat elders first. Wash hands before bread. Speak little evil. Keep peace. A steady historical fact steadies your reverence. Le Ménager de Paris, late 14th century, survives as a husband's counsel to his young wife. Recipes, courtesies, pieties, household laws copied and read by townfolk who cared to behave. Its voice reaches your century like a neighbor at the fence. Quirk. In a borrowed copy, a cat's paw marked the margin beside, "Do not scold at table." You have obeyed that paw more faithfully than any sermon. Historians still argue how widely such manuals traveled beyond literate urban homes. Were their rules common practice or ideal ink? Did village thresholds learn more from mothers than from manuscripts? You suspect mothers did most of the printing upon faces. You rehearse the book's temper, under your breath, gentle voice. Firm hands, clean borders. Courtesies become tools. A cushion slides forward for rank. A palm steers zeal. A linen edits paint. A silence cools gossip. Nothing dramatic, everything useful. At night, you put the sayings away with the spoons. Pages can rest. Brooms will rise first. In the morning, the rules will wake in your body whether or not you read them, which is the only proof a book can ask. Bones keep their own accounts. By late week, your cheeks ache, neck stiffens, jaw hinge hums like a hive. You warm a little oil with beeswax and sage. Rub it into the hinge, and let a river pebble heated by the brazier rest, where muscle sulks. Stone remembers summer. Muscle remembers manners. A steady historical fact steadies the salve. Household balms mix fats or oils with beeswax and herbs, sage, rosemary, comfrey used for chapped skin and sore joints. Apothecaries sell fancier unguents, but kitchens mend most aches. Warmth is medicine you can afford daily. Quirk. A carter swears by tying a thread of wool loosely around the jaw while one sleeps to remind teeth to stop arguing. You tried it once and woke laughing. Still, the jaw felt quieter for having been noticed. Historians still argue what exact recipes traveled common kitchens for aches like yours. And whether comfrey and like herbs were applied as poultices to joints as often as later herbals claim, receipts arrive incomplete. Practice fills gaps. You stay with humble oil and heat. You shorten greetings when your hinge complains more air. Gentler touches. A palm speaking where lips would. The pomander does extra work. Rosemary rises from the brazier like a village blessing. After dark, you count slowly to 10 with your mouth closed, letting every muscle hear the numbers. By candle's end, the ache loosens its laces. Tomorrow the jaw will return to its metronome. Tonight the cheek belongs to your own pillow, which asks for nothing but the weight it is given. Hypocrisy warms shyer tongues and misguides bolder ones. Evening cups loosen aim. Kisses drift wider. Farewell forgets it is a door and tries to be a bench. You guide with hands more than cheeks, keeping candle, veil, and temper from becoming the same story. A steady historical fact steadies the jug. Hypocrisy spiced wine sweetened with sugar or honey and strained through cloth circulates in towns and at feasts. Spice boxes, drageoirs, appear in inventories. Recipes call for cinnamon, ginger, grains of paradise, and sometimes clove. It is hospitality wearing perfume. Quirk. Your neighbor keeps a tiny silver wine key shaped like a fish to stir his cup to wake the spice. He claims it improves farewells by a third. You suspect the key shines away bad math. Historians still argue how common hypocrisy was in modest homes versus guild halls and great tables, and whether evening cups were regular practice or feast day indulgence. Purchases and boasts do not always match. Your door meets spiced lips enough to keep linen busy but not ruined. You keep rules for late hours. Speak first. Listeners kiss more accurately. Hold the pomander higher. Clove brings the road back from every goblet. Offer air on the third kiss. Most merriment cannot count after 2. Praise a steady candle to end a visit without naming the guest who needs ending. By the time the jug empties to dregs, the house has survived its festival of farewells. You thank Rosemary for keeping the room a room, not a tavern, and lay out tomorrow's triangle with extra patience. Night has its own manners. You latch shutters, bank the brazier, lay salve along the seam of your lips where wind and bristle negotiated all day. The house turns from harbor back to shell. You listen to the lane quiet, into watch steps and a dog's brief opinion. A steady historical fact steadies the hush. Curfew bells mark nights in many towns. Watches walk. Shutters bar drafts and unkindness. Most homes rely on embers and habit until matins nudges morning. Darkness is governance by wood. Quirk. You swear you can hear a cooling loaf sing tiny cracks along the crust after baking, so you keep the last heel near your pillow and pretend the bread counts sheep for you. Sleep believes such sounds. Historians still argue how uniformly curfews were enforced in small places, how many households owned lanterns worth the candle, and how much the night watch was a presence versus a rumor. The answers vary by purse and parish. You make your own uniformity with a bar across the door. You read the day backward feast gloss, dust, whispers, breads, bows, and feel how each device earned its keep. Beeswax fence, weighted hem, orange orchard, vinegar thunder, sleeping corked. Your cheek has been a republic all day, greeting without keeping. You sit by the embers with balm on the jaw hinge, and your pebble cooling in the palm. The last thing you smell is rosemary and clean linen. The last thing you hear is the latch remembering how to be quiet. Tomorrow will kiss you again. Tonight you kiss no one, and the silence answers. The house breathes like a sleeping animal, slow and sure. You breathe with it, letting each room return to being a room and not a harbor. The bench forgets elbows, the mat forgets feet, the latch forgets hands. Your cheek belongs to the pillow, and the pillow asks nothing complicated. You let your mouth soften within the thin line of beeswax, a fence that guards even in rest, and your jaw loosens by degrees the way a fist remembers it can be a palm. Outside, the lane has folded itself. The night watch passes like a sentence spoken softly and finished well. If rain comes, it is a page turned, not a correction. If wind comes, it is a shawl pulled closer, not a summons. Far away a bell tells the hour to stones. The stones keep the secret. You feel the pebble cooling from your hand into the world, giving its warmth back to the dark in a small exchange that makes perfect sense. Herbs go quiet too. Rosemary releases its last thin green. Mint is only an idea in water now. The pomander rests, cloves asleep in orange like stars in a winter fruit. Linen hangs in its night weather, becoming tomorrow's innocence drop by drop. Vinegar remains corked, thunderfolded. Even the tally stick has stopped remembering and lies like a simple piece of wood, useful only for being. You imagine doors closing along the street, each with its own garden under a sleeve, its own fox spoon and cabbage tricks, its own ways to count without scolding. Customs can be blunt. Kindness makes them round. You will stand again and lend your cheek to a century that expects hinges to work. For now, you let history breathe without you. Your last thought is a field in summer where no one is arriving and no one is leaving, where the only kiss is air on grass and the only count is crickets. We hope this glimpse into old customs has been a calm and pleasant one. If it made you curious for more, you can like, share, or leave a kind comment. And, if you wish, subscribe to be here for the next unhurried tradition we explore together. End of script. Sweet dreams.